Chapter 629. You must be Yihao's spies. Die. Before Mo Ji could speak, an old ancestor behind him suddenly attacked. The few people who had spoken up for Yi Hao were instantly killed. Seeing this scene, all the soldiers took half a step back in fear and nervously looked at the old ancestor and Mo Ji. The old ancestor clapped his hands and continued to stand behind Mo Ji as if he had just killed a few ants. His expression did not change at all. Seeing the old ancestor attack, Mo Ji's face was filled with satisfaction. He did not expect the old ancestor to support him so much. Mo Ji's heart was filled with pride. A traitor like this who has been groomed by the Mo Shin nation dares to help an outsider. Yi Hao's dog words. Do you think he should be killed? Mo Ji's gaze swept across the crowd. Everyone looked at Mo Ji's vicious gaze and did not dare to speak, because if they were not careful, their lives could be in danger. This Lord has said what needs to be said. Those who are willing to follow this Lord, take out your weapons. Hearing Mo Ji's words, how could they not know that Mo Ji wanted a rebel? But Mo Ji's words were righteous, and he had the support of the old ancestor behind him. Everyone immediately fell into deep thought. We are willing to follow your highness and rebuild the glory of the Mo Shun nation. Some of the people who had been waiting for a long time in the crowd seized the opportunity and shouted, "Good. As long as you follow this Lord will not treat you unfairly." Mo Ji said with a smile. As Mo Ji's men shouted, those who originally did not have any hope for this war began to waver. All of you, don't hesitate anymore. Follow this Lord home. Mo Ji saw that everyone was wavering and continued to crush their hearts. Could it be that you are willing to die for Yi Hao and believe his nonsense and bury my Mo Shun nation in the sea of fire? Brothers, don't be silly. We should go back and protect our families and our nation, not wait for death here. Hearing Mo Ji's words, the old ancestors were satisfied. They didn't expect him to hide so deeply, to be so scheming. Moreover, he was so decisive and straightforward in his actions. To be able to persuade the soldiers to betray God Emperor Mo at this moment, one could see Mo Xian's guts and courage. How is this still the same person? The moment he saw God Emperor Mo, he was like a mouse that saw a cat. In the past, the 7 divine princes and Junwei had concealed the brilliance of Inkstain. At this moment, Inkstain had finally exposed his ambitions. Furthermore, Inkmark's words had also convinced them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come back to help Inkmark. All of you, the Second Highness will be the best candidate to become the next God Emperor. All of you, follow him and become heroes of the Empire. Even if you don't trust the Second Prince, don't you trust us? As the Mo Shun Kingdom's old ancestors, how can we do anything that would harm the Mo Shin Kingdom? As the patriarchs of the Ink Spirit Nation, everything we do is for the benefit and safety of the Ink Spirit Nation. The other patriarchs also helped Mo Ji persuade the crowd. Hearing the words of Mo Xian and the patriarchs, most people finally chose to follow Mo Xian in their hearts. All right, follow me back to the country. Whoever dares to stop us will be killed without mercy. Mo Ji saw that almost everyone had raised the weapons in their hands. Mo Ji also drew his sword and pointed it at the sky as he shouted with a bright light in his eyes. Not good, your majesty. The second prince has betrayed us. Just as God Emperor Mo was leading the frontline troops to wage war against the Wu Ming divine nation, a soldier suddenly came to report. What? That unfilial son. Hearing the soldier's words, God Emperor Mo was so angry that his face flushed red. Old ancestor, please help me capture that unfilial son. God Emperor Mo couldn't leave at this moment, so he could only order the soldier. The soldier took a glance at God Emperor Mo and revealed a difficult expression. What's wrong? Why aren't you going? God Emperor Mo turned to look at the soldier and frowned slightly. Your Majesty, old ancestors, the second prince has betrayed us. The soldier hesitated for a while before saying, PFFF. Hearing the soldier's words, God Emperor Mo couldn't hold it in anymore. His throat felt warm, and his head buzzed as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Your Majesty! Your Majesty, are you all right? Your Majesty! The soldier quickly helped God Emperor Mo up. Some of the generals also rushed over and looked at God Emperor Mo worriedly. The most unacceptable thing in the world was the betrayal of one's family. Although he was in the royal family, God Emperor Mo had experienced such things many times and was already used to it. However, this was the first time that he was betrayed by his son, and it made him angry. Furthermore, what he couldn't understand the most was why those old ancestors were in cahoots with Moj and betrayed him. God Emperor Mo calmed himself down and stood up again. How many people did that unfilial son take away? Almost all of the rear troops were taken away. A total of 3,000 martial gods and 300,000 martial saints. The soldier quickly replied. Although God Emperor Mo was prepared for it, his heart still ached when he heard the number. God Emperor Mo looked around at the soldiers who were still fighting. He couldn't help but sigh. Instruct the soldiers to retreat. At this moment, even if God Emperor Mo didn't want to retreat, he had no choice. Currently, he had less than 2,000 martial gods and less than 200,000 martial saints. How were they going to fight against Wu Ming God Nation with these people? After all, although there weren't many of them at the start, they could still hold on for a while even if Wu Ming God Emperor were to return. Now that the difference in numbers was too huge, it was impossible to hold on. Otherwise, if Wu Ming God Emperor were to return, it would really be over. Hearing God Emperor Mo's words, the soldiers left the battlefield and retreated. As for the people from Wu Ming God Nation, they were afraid of God Mo Nation's tricks, so they didn't chase after them. General, according to the news from our scouts, it seems like God Mo Nation is having internal strife. Their second prince has escaped with his men. What? Is the news true? When the great general of Wu Ming God Nation heard the report from his subordinate, his face was filled with shock and joy. General, it's true. The subordinate also replied with joy. I said it's fine. Why did that old man retreat so quickly this time? The great general's face revealed a look of enlightenment as he understood the situation. Reporting to the great general, His Majesty has sent news that he will be back in an incense's time. At this moment, a subordinate came to report. Good. The great general was in a good mood as he took out his sword. Pass down my orders. Leave 10% of the soldiers to guard the city. The rest of the soldiers follow me to retrieve God Emperor Mo's head. After receiving the great general's orders, all the soldiers flew out of the city in a single file and headed towards the direction where God Emperor Mo retreated. Your Majesty, not good. The people from Wu Ming God Nation have caught up. At this moment, God Mo Nation was retreating in a hurry. Looking at the flustered look of the soldiers, God Emperor Mo frowned and shouted, What are you panicking for? Order the soldiers to retreat at full speed. Chapter 630. However, things were always getting worse and worse. At this moment, a martial god covered in blood flew to the front of Emperor God Mo and said with difficulty, Not good, Your Majesty. Wu Ming Divine Nation is right in front of us. They are less than an incense's time away from us. What? Emperor God Mo's face changed. Emperor God Mo looked at the people behind him and realized that everyone's eyes were filled with fear. Forget it. God Emperor Mo sighed. Take off your armors and run for your lives. This emperor will help you delay for as long as possible. It's all my fault for not teaching my son well and giving birth to such an evil creature. Otherwise, you wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Emperor God Mo regretted that he couldn't teach Moj a lesson personally. If Moj didn't bring him away, he wouldn't be in such a passive state now. In the past, his army could at least resist Emperor God Moj for quite some time. However, it was different now. The difference in numbers was too great, and they couldn't stop him. Fighting with Emperor God Moj would be like hitting a rock with an egg. We are willing to fight to the death with Your Majesty. We will follow Your Majesty in life and death. Your Majesty, even if we die, we will not abandon Your Majesty. Your Majesty, let's fight with them. At most, we will follow your Majesty in our next life. We will definitely not abandon your Majesty and live a lowly life. At this moment, the soldiers that were following God Emperor Mo were basically all loyal to God Emperor Mo. If they were blinded by fear at the beginning because of the difference in strength between both parties, they were now filled with fear. However, at this moment, they were influenced by Emperor God Mo's words, and their blood was reignited. Ha ha, what a touching scene. Since all of you are asking for death, it's not good for me to not fulfill your wishes. Just when everyone was talking, laughter could be heard from the sky. A huge dragon carriage flew over from the sky, and behind it were countless soldiers from Wu Ming Divine Nation. Emperor God Moj laughed as he walked out of the dragon carriage and stood in the sky. He was wearing a luxurious five-clawed dragon robe. Emperor God Moj wore the Wu Ming crown and looked at Emperor God Mo in disdain. It was as if he was looking at a dead man. I really didn't expect that the famous divine Emperor Mo would actually have such a good son. In the end, he ended up being betrayed by everyone. What about the old ancestor of your divine Emperor Mo? Did he betray you too? Ha ha! Emperor God Wu Ming's mocking words immediately caused a series of mocking laughter behind him. Hearing Emperor God Wu Ming's mocking laughter, Emperor God Mo's face turned gloomy. Little Wu Ming, if you want to fight, let's fight. I'm not afraid of you. Don't even think about using your tongue. A bunch of stray dogs, and you still have the cheek to clamor. Today, I will humiliate all of you. Let's see what you can do to me. Emperor God Wu Ming said with disdain. Your Majesty, let's fight it out with them. Wu Ming has gone too far. Your Majesty, you can't let them humiliate you anymore. Fight them. Even if I die today, I'll drag one of Fu Jiuzhong's dogs down with me. At this moment, the rage in the hearts of the soldiers of the Ink God Kingdom was completely ignited by Emperor God Wu Ming. Ha ha! Be angry, be angry. We like to see your angry yet helpless expressions. Looking at the enraged expression of the Ink God Nation's soldiers, Emperor God Wu Ming laughed complacently. God Emperor Mo, don't you love your soldiers? How about we play a game today? Emperor God Wu Ming looked at Emperor God Mo. His eyes were filled with humiliation. Your Majesty, there's no need to care about him. Let's fight it out with him. Your Majesty, Wu Ming is obviously trying to humiliate you. You mustn't agree to it. We are not afraid of death. That's right. Let's fight it out with them. The soldiers of the Ink God Nation could see the humiliation in Emperor God Wu Ming's eyes. They were all agitated. Hearing the words of the soldiers, Emperor God Mo made up his mind. He looked at Emperor God Wu Ming and said, "All right, we'll agree to it. What game is it? Men, bring out the good stuff that we've prepared for Emperor God Mo." Emperor God Wu Ming laughed. Just as he finished his words, a dozen men walked out. Each of them was carrying a wooden bucket. Emperor God Mo frowned. He had already guessed what it was. Open it and let Emperor God Mo take a look. Emperor God Wu Ming ordered arrogantly. At the same time, he subconsciously covered his nose. Outrageous. It's actually excrement. Seeing the men of Wu Ming God Nation opening the wooden bucket, the soldiers of the Ink God Nation were infuriated. Come on, Emperor God Mo. If you eat a mouthful, I'll let one of your men go. If you eat a bucket, I'll put 200 martial gods and 20,000 martial saints. If you eat all of them, I'll let all of your men go. Emperor God Wu Ming pointed at the feces bucket and said humiliatingly, Wu Ming, you bastard. If you have the ability, do it. Don't you dare humiliate our emperor. Whoever is afraid of death is a coward. Brothers, let's fight it out with them. Fight it out with them. At this moment, the soldiers of the Ink God Nation could no longer tolerate it. They were all prepared to fight to the death. Emperor God Mo, you have to understand the situation clearly. Are you willing to let your loyal subordinates die, sacrificing one of your men in exchange for all of their lives? This trade is worth it, right? Emperor God Wu Ming ignored the furious soldiers of the Ink God Nation. He continued to talk to the cold Emperor God Mo. Are you serious? Emperor God Mo gritted his teeth in hatred towards Emperor God Wu Ming. But he had no choice. At this point, he was indeed unwilling to let his loyal subordinates die for him, because there was no value in dying like that. If he could exchange everyone's lives with his humiliation, he was willing to be humiliated. Your Majesty, you can't. Hearing Emperor Godmo's words, the soldiers of the Ink God nation were moved to tears. Emperor God Wu Ming, if you want to humiliate us. Let our emperor go. A great general stood out and pointed at Emperor God Wu Ming's nose. Bah, who do you think you are? Emperor God Wu Ming looked at the great general of the Ink God nation in disdain. You. The great general was furious. If Emperor God Mo didn't allow him to take action, he would definitely fight it out with Emperor God Wu Ming. Mo who backed down. Emperor God Mo shouted. Your Majesty, the great general was unwilling to back down. He retreated to the back of Emperor God Mo and stared at Emperor God Wu Ming fiercely. Emperor God Mo is sensible. Eat. I will definitely keep my words. The dignified Emperor God Mo eating. If this were to spread out, it would definitely be interesting. At this moment, Emperor God Wu Ming didn't give any face to Emperor God Mo as he laughed arrogantly. Who asked Emperor God Mo to become a toy in his hands? Emperor God Mo's life and death were in his hands. Furthermore, he even grabbed hold of Emperor God Mo's weakness. Hence, he knew that he could humiliate Emperor God Mo however he wanted. As for releasing the soldiers of the Ink God nation, it was simply a pipe dream. He was just trying to fool Emperor God Mo. He wanted to turn all the soldiers of the Ink God nation into his slaves. They would never be able to raise their heads again. When he thought about how Emperor God Mo, who was on the same level as him in the past, was about to eat shit in front of him. Chapter 631. Emperor God Mo, are you going to eat it? Emperor God Wu Ming raised his arm, and all his subordinates immediately raised their weapons and prepared to attack. The threat was obvious. Everyone from Wu Ming Divine Kingdom looked at Emperor God Mo proudly. Although Emperor God Mo was furious, he seemed to have made a decision and walked towards the wooden bucket. Looking at Emperor God Mo's action, Emperor God Wu Ming's smile became wider. Let me see who dares to touch Emperor God Mo. At this moment, an arrogant voice was heard. Who dares to be so arrogant? The soldiers of Wu Ming Divine Kingdom opened up a path. There was a young man in an emperor robe with two ladies standing beside him. They looked exceptionally beautiful. One of the ladies was also wearing an emperor robe, while the other was wearing an armor. Who are they? They are so beautiful. That brat is really lucky. He actually got two beauties like this. However, I don't think they will have a good ending for disturbing His Majesty's interest. Everyone from Wu Ming Divine Kingdom started to discuss as they looked at Yi Hao and the other two curiously. Grandfather. Mo Jingfang saw her grandfather, and her eyes turned red as she ran towards him. So it's Emperor God Mo's granddaughter. Men, catch her. Looking at Mo Jingfang, who was running towards Emperor God Mo, Emperor God Wu Ming waved his hand and ordered his subordinates. Hearing Emperor God Wu Ming's order, a few martial gods rushed out and tried to catch Mo Jingfang. Courting death. Looking at the few martial gods who tried to catch Mo Jingfang, Yi Hao circulated the lightning energy in his body and released a few bolts of lightning. The few of them did not even have the chance to react before they were turned into nothingness. Oh my God, what was that? Was that lightning? How is that possible? Who is that young man? How could he control lightning? My senses are definitely right. That was definitely lightning. Seeing the martial gods being blasted into pieces, the crowd shifted their gazes toward Yi Hao in astonishment. Emperor God Wu Ming's face changed. Who are you? How dare you disturb His Majesty's interest? Get lost if you don't want to die. Although Emperor God Wu Ming saw Yi Hao using lightning, he only thought that Yi Hao used some kind of martial skill to play a trick. This was because he had never heard of anyone in the Myriad Kingdom continent who could use lightning. Moreover, it was such a young person. Your Majesty, look at that woman. Doesn't she look like Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's wife? Just as Emperor God Wu Ming was glaring at Yi Hao, an old ancestor walked to the front of Emperor God Wu Ming and spoke softly. What? Profound Abyss God Emperor was stunned at first. Then, he looked at Purple Heaven God Emperor with a shocked expression. It really is her. What is she doing here instead of fighting Heaven Shaking God Emperor in Purple Heaven Divine Nation? Your Majesty, could it be that the Heaven Shaking Divine Nation has been destroyed? The ancestor suddenly had a bold guess. Emperor God Wu Ming immediately denied. He then looked around and saw that there were only Yi Hao and the other two. He heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Didn't you see that there are only 3 of them?" Walala. Just then, there was a sound that alerted Emperor God Wu Ming. But when he saw who it was, Emperor God Wu Ming laughed. "Greetings, Your Majesty. Welcome back to His Majesty." That's right. The person who came was his trusted general. He had left Emperor God Wu Ming to guard Wu Ming Divine Kingdom. It could be said that the backbone of Emperor God Wu Ming Divine Kingdom was all here. Emperor God Wu Ming was even more fearless. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor, what are you doing here instead of fighting Emperor God Wu Ming Divine Kingdom? Emperor God Wu Ming looked at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor in disdain. Emperor God Wu Ming, don't be so arrogant. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor was furious. Haha, I'm going to be arrogant today. After all, it must feel great to ride an Emperor God under my crotch. Emperor God Wu Ming did not hide his gaze as he sized up Purple Heaven Emperor God. In the past, when they were both Emperor Gods, he had never looked at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor in such a way out of respect. When Emperor God Wu Ming saw Purple Heaven Emperor God's unapproachable demeanor and his beautiful face, Emperor God Wu Ming's body was instantly filled with underworld flame. If it wasn't for the large number of people here, he would have pushed Purple Heaven Divine Emperor to the ground. Emperor God Wu Ming looked at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's body and swallowed his saliva. Did I allow you to touch my woman? Yi Hao suddenly snorted, and a bolt of lightning surged out from his body. Insignificant skill. Emperor God Wu Ming looked at the bolt of lightning that was attacking him with disdain. Although Emperor God Wu Ming looked disdainful, he saw that the bolt of lightning had killed a few of his martial gods. Hence, Emperor God Wu Ming was very cautious and attacked the bolt of lightning. So weak? You were just trying to be mysterious. Emperor God Wu Ming attacked the bolt of lightning with all his might. The bolt of lightning instantly turned into nothingness and dissipated in the air. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor looked at Yi Hao in surprise. She had seen Yi Hao's lightning attack before and knew that it couldn't be so weak. You are indeed trash. What other tricks do you have? Show me. Emperor God Wu Ming looked at Yi Hao with disdain. Let's see who is the trash after the fight. Do you dare to fight with me? Yi Hao looked at Emperor God Wu Ming and said. In actual fact, he had weakened his attack on purpose. This was because he didn't have much lightning energy left. At most, he could kill 3 more ultimate martial gods. There were 5 ultimate martial gods standing behind Emperor God Wu Ming. All the soldiers of Wu Ming Holy Kingdom were there. There were more than 10,000 martial gods and 1 million martial sages. He wasn't confident that he could take down all of them and win. Hence, he thought of provoking Emperor God Wu Ming. As long as he killed Emperor God Wu Ming Holy Kingdom would be in chaos. Trash like you isn't worth my time. You're just dirtying my hands, Emperor God Wu Ming said with disdain. I think you don't have a guts. You can hide in your turtle shell then, coward. Coward, Yi Hao said disdainfully. He only hoped that he could provoke Emperor God Wu Ming with this simple provocation. Otherwise, he would have no choice but to fight head-on. This ignorant brat dares to humiliate my majesty. Your Majesty, please allow me to go and kill this little bastard. Emperor God Wu Ming was slightly angry. When he heard what the old ancestor said, he raised his hand to reject. Although he knew that Yi Hao was trying to provoke him, he still couldn't believe that he was being called a coward in front of so many people. He was an emperor god. If he didn't do anything, he would be disgraced. Let me see what you are capable of. Emperor God Wu Ming gave the old ancestors a look. If there was a trap, the old ancestors would save him immediately. Chapter 632. Yi Hao immediately retreated, but he was too late. His head was instantly pierced by Emperor God Wu Ming's golden spear. Haha, so you're really a piece of trash. I thought you were some expert. Emperor God Wu Ming laughed proudly when he saw Yi Hao dying under his spear. However, Emperor God Wu Ming did not realize that there was no fear on Yi Hao's face. Instead, there was a strange smile on his face. Yi Hao, Emperor God Mo, and Mo Jingfeng cried out involuntarily when they saw this scene. On the other hand, Emperor God Zetian panicked, but she was still relatively calm. This was because she believed that Yi Hao would not be killed by Emperor God Wu Ming so easily. Moreover, this was her first battle with Yi Hao. She also felt that she had killed Yi Hao, but Yi Hao was still alive and well. Who is the coward? Emperor God Wu Ming picked up Yi Hao's head and turned to the soldiers of Wu Ming Divine Kingdom as he shouted in high spirits. Ha! 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 The soldiers of Wu Ming Divine Kingdom shouted excitedly when they saw Emperor God Wu Ming's power. How is it, Emperor God Mo, start eating **T. As for the two of you, you will serve me and be my female slaves. After killing Yi Hao, Emperor God Wu Ming was even more fearless as he looked at Emperor God Mo and the other two. I think you should go to hell to eat **T. At this moment, Emperor God Wu Ming suddenly heard a familiar voice beside his ear. How is this possible? Emperor God Wu Ming looked at the tip of his spear subconsciously. At this moment, Yi Hao's head was obviously on the tip of his spear. Why could he still hear Yi Hao's voice? Not good. Suddenly, an unknown fear filled his heart. Emperor God Wu Ming kept his golden spear and wanted to return to the army. Suddenly, there was a strong aura attacking him from all directions. Emperor God Wu Ming took a closer look and realized that it was lightning that was attacking him from all directions. The lightning was like seawater, impenetrable. There was nowhere to run. Ha! Do you really think that I am so easy to kill? Yi Hao appeared in the lightning region and looked at Emperor God Wu Ming, who was defending himself against the lightning in a hurry. You're not dead? Impossible. You are definitely dead. Emperor God Wu Ming was completely dumbfounded, because he had killed Yi Hao with his own hands and even cut off Yi Hao's head. How could Yi Hao still be alive? Who exactly are you? Emperor God Wu Ming was still in disbelief as he stared at Yi Hao. Idiot, don't you know that there are still clones in this world? Yi Hao looked at Emperor God Wu Ming with ridicule. Although he had wasted a doppelganger, he was able to make Emperor God Wu Ming lower his guard and trap him in the lightning region. This was not a loss. You are so sinister. After hearing Yi Hao's words, Emperor God Wu Ming was extremely regretful and looked at him with hatred. Just as Yi Hao had thought when he attacked Yi Hao at the beginning, he was still very cautious. Even if Yi Hao used the lightning region, he could still escape. However, the moment he killed Yi Hao, his wariness disappeared and was instead replaced by a sense of pride. After all, in front of the army, as the emperor, he killed a strong enemy with a single spear strike. It could be said that he was in the limelight in front of the army. However, he did not expect that it was Yi Hao's trap. At this moment, Emperor God Wu Ming even wanted to cry. You despicable man, let go of me quickly. Otherwise, I will exterminate your entire clan. Emperor God Wu Ming tried his best to defend against the lightning that came from all directions. You are about to die, and you still don't know your place. Yi Hao sneered. Die! Then, Yi Hao controlled the lightning and attacked Emperor God Wu Ming's defense continuously. Don't! I surrender. Let me go. You don't have my orders. Even if you kill me, my subordinates and old ancestor will not let you go. As long as you let me go, I will withdraw from the fight for hegemony in the 10,000 countries continent. I will hand over the Wu Ming holy nation to you. The martial power in Emperor God Wu Ming's body was slowly depleting. The more it was depleting, the more anxious he was. Moreover, he was about to run out of elixirs that could recover his martial power. At this moment, he had no choice but to put down his dignity and beg Yi Hao for mercy. However, Yi Hao looked at him coldly and did not care about him at all. Yi Hao wanted to kill Emperor God Wu Ming with a single punch. With his own strength, he could definitely do it. However, Emperor God Wu Ming did not seem to want to live. He actually dared to humiliate his woman. This was something that Yi Hao could not tolerate. This was why Yi Hao tortured Emperor God Wu Ming like this. Because torturing a person, making him fear death, and letting him slowly approach death was the most torturous and cruel thing. This was definitely better than killing Emperor God Wu Ming with a single punch. If Emperor God Wu Ming knew what Yi Hao was thinking, he probably would not have resisted and would have killed himself. I will fight it out with you. Emperor God Wu Ming could not tolerate such torment. He attacked Yi Hao with his bare hands. Even if he died, he would not let Yi Hao have a good time. From his point of view, Yi Hao was not as strong as him. He could only defeat him by relying on lightning. Looking at Emperor God Wu Ming, who was attacking him, Yi Hao sneered. "You don't know your place." Yi Hao's face turned cold, and he slapped Emperor God Wu Ming's face. Emperor God Wu Ming did not have any strength to resist, and he was almost knocked out by Yi Hao. Emperor God Wu Ming was still circulating his martial power to defend against the lightning attack. However, after being slapped by Yi Hao, his circulating martial power was instantly interrupted. The lightning struck his body, and his body became a mess of flesh and blood. Emperor God Wu Ming's emperor robe turned into nothingness. One should know that although it was just a robe, it was comparable to a god-level defensive weapon. However, it was useless in front of the lightning power. Emperor God Wu Ming endured the pain and wanted to circulate his martial power to defend himself against the lightning. He did not expect Yi Hao to be so strong. It was completely out of his expectations. Based on the previous slap, it proved that Yi Hao was much stronger than him. Slap! However, before he could stand up, Yi Hao slapped him again. The martial power that Emperor God Wu Ming had just circulated was forcefully interrupted again. You son of a b***tch. I will not let you off. Emperor God Wu Ming screamed in pain, and he did not forget to curse. Who are you? Why are you torturing me like this? Just kill me. No, I can't take it anymore. Emperor God Wu Ming could not stop screaming in pain within the lightning. At this moment, he could not circulate his martial power, even if he wanted to. Looking at Emperor God Wu Ming's appearance, Yi Hao felt that it was about time. He grabbed Emperor God Wu Ming's neck and withdrew the lightning at the same time. Huff! Seeing that the lightning power had disappeared and he could breathe fresh air again, Emperor God Wu Ming took a deep breath and a smile appeared on his face. It was simply not a place for humans to stay in the lightning. Yi Hao, are you all right? You're not dead? Mo Jingfang looked at Yi Hao in shock. She wiped away the tears in her eyes and rubbed her eyes in disbelief. Chapter 633. Seeing Yi Hao standing there unharmed, one of the generals from Wu Ming Divine Kingdom immediately pointed at Yi Hao and questioned. They did not know what happened just now. They only saw a lightning region appear in the sky, and God Emperor Wu Ming disappeared. For you. Yi Hao looked at the charred God Emperor Wu Ming in his hand and threw him to the general. What the hell is this? That general didn't recognize God Emperor Wu Ming at all, as he threw a punch at God Emperor Wu Ming. God Emperor Wu Ming was sent flying. Rebel, how dare you hit me? God Emperor Wu Ming would never have thought that he would be sent flying by his own subordinate. God Emperor Wu Ming fell to the ground and cried out in pain. At the same time, he scolded. When the general heard God Emperor Wu Ming's voice, he was shocked and looked at God Emperor Wu Ming in disbelief. He could not tell that the charred and bloody person on the ground was the high and mighty God Emperor Wu Ming. Save his majesty. The few old ancestors from Wu Ming Divine Kingdom could not care less about the shock in their hearts and flew towards God Emperor Wu Ming. Old ancestors, save me. Hearing the words of the old ancestors, Emperor God Wu Ming seemed to have seen a glimmer of hope for survival. Save you? I'm not done yet. Just as God Emperor Wu Ming finished his words, Yi Hao's devilish voice rang in God Emperor Wu Ming's ears again. Yi Hao mentioned God Emperor Wu Ming. Didn't you ask Emperor God Mo to eat sh*t? I think it's more suitable for you to eat sh*t. Little bastard, let go of his majesty. If you don't let go of his majesty, I'll kill them all. Just as the few old ancestors finished their words, the soldiers from Wu Ming Divine Kingdom had already surrounded the people from Mo Shin Kingdom. Yi Hao, don't bother about us. Kill this trash. Emperor God Mo was afraid that Yi Hao would let go of Emperor God Emperor Wu Ming, so he immediately said. The soldiers of the Ink God Nation also chimed in one after another. Yi Hao's expert, kill him. If worst comes to worst, we'll fight it out with them. Yi Hao, we can't let him go. We're not afraid of death. If we bring him along before we die, it'll be worth it. Yi Hao experts, kill him. Don't hesitate. Don't worry about us. Little bastard, you better think carefully. If you kill His Majesty, none of you will leave here alive today. An old ancestor was afraid that Yi Hao would disregard everything and kill Emperor God Wu Ming. Thus, he immediately threatened Yi Hao. Are you threatening me? Yi Hao chuckled as he looked at the patriarch. Humph. The situation is clear. So what if I threaten you? If you know what's good for you, release His Majesty. The patriarch of the Endless Divine Nation chuckled as he looked at Yi Hao. Zetian. Yi Hao shouted to Zetian, Godly Emperor. Zetian, Godly Emperor, immediately nodded, indicating that he understood. Everyone looked at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor and saw him take out a bow and arrow. What is she doing? Could it be some powerful divine artifact? Everyone, be careful. The patriarchs of the Wu Ming Divine Nation cautiously stared at the bow in Violet Sky Divine Emperor's hand and transmitted their thoughts to him at the same time. Swoosh! Under Yi Hao's signal, Zetian, Godly Emperor, drew the bow in his hand. The arrow shot into the sky and exploded into a beautiful light. What the hell is this? It doesn't have any offensive power. The patriarchs of the Endless Divine Nation were already prepared to defend themselves. However, after the arrow exploded in the sky, there was no more movement. Ha ha ha! Is she putting on a show for us? Just as everyone was laughing, a loud and clear voice resounded through the sky. A cloud-piercing arrow and thousands of soldiers and horses come to meet me. Rumble! As soon as the voice fell, countless experts rushed out from all directions. Looking at the experts rushing out from all directions, the soldiers of the Endless Divine Nation were shocked. The experts rushing out from all directions were no weaker than their own forces. In fact, they were much stronger than them. Where did so many soldiers come from? Are they friends or foes? The patriarchs of the Endless Divine Nation were stunned as they looked around cautiously. It would have been fine if they hadn't looked around. However, when they looked around, they realized that the soldiers of the Endless Divine Nation had been surrounded. Greetings, Your Majesty. The soldiers of the Jintian Divine Nation who had been subdued by Yi Hao shouted. Greetings, Your Majesty. Greetings, Crown Prince Yi Hao. The soldiers of the Purple Sky Divine Nation also shouted at the Purple Sky, Godly Emperor. When did I become the Crown Prince? Yi Hao raised an eyebrow and rubbed his nose as he looked at the Purple Sky, Godly Emperor, in confusion. If the Purple Sky, Godly Emperor, was the Crown Prince, and he was the Crown Prince, wouldn't the hierarchy be messed up? However, Yi Hao realized that the Purple Sky, Godly Emperor, was also confused and was shaking his head at him. Yi Hao looked at the smiling patriarchs of the Purple Sky Divine Nation and instantly understood what was going on. These patriarchs must have been behind this. However, now wasn't the time to be calculative. What in the world is going on? God Emperor, Mo asked Mo Jingfong as he looked around in shock. The army was like a tidal wave. Grandfather, Yi Hao killed the heaven-shaking Godly Emperor and the patriarchs of the Jintian Divine Nation. At the same time, he subdued all the experts of the Jintian Divine Nation. Mo Jingfong immediately said with pride. Hearing Mo Jingfong's words, God Emperor, Mo couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't expect Yi Hao to be so strong. Didn't that mean that Yi Hao was still hiding something when he slapped Yi Hao with his 3 palms? He was only in his 20s, and he was already so strong. How could there be such a monster in the world? God Emperor, Mo swallowed his saliva. Looking at Yi Hao, who was standing proudly in the crowd, God Emperor Mo knew that the myriad kingdom continent could no longer contain Yi Hao. This small myriad kingdom continent would only limit Yi Hao's development. They're all you men. Although the patriarchs of the endless divine nation didn't want to believe it, they still asked subconsciously. Do you think that you still have the right to ask questions now? Yi Hao smiled and looked at the patriarchs of the endless divine nation. You? The patriarchs of the endless divine nation pointed at Yi Hao angrily, but he couldn't say a word. Because at this moment, the endless divine nation was already at a disadvantage. At this moment, the soldiers of the endless divine nation were being attacked from both inside and outside. Moreover, their emperor was in the hands of the enemy. At this moment, they indeed didn't have the right to ask questions to Yi Hao. What do you want? God Emperor Mo looked at the flustered soldiers of the endless divine nation and looked at Yi Hao angrily. I won't change my words. Go and eat those 10 buckets of shit, and I'll let you go. Yi Hao pointed at the 10 buckets. He was a person who knew how to repay kindness. The reason why God Emperor Mo came to attack the endless divine nation was to help him. However, because God Emperor Mo helped him, he was almost forced to eat shit by the endless divine nation. This made Yi Hao furious. Therefore, he had to avenge God Emperor Mo. You want me to eat shit? Dream on. Even if you kill me, I won't do it. The endless divine nation roared in anger. He didn't expect things to change so quickly. Previously, he was the one who was proud of himself and forced God Emperor Mo to eat shit. Chapter 634. You are not eating? Yi Hao raised his eyebrows and looked at Emperor God Wu Ming in his hand. Kill me, I will not eat it. Emperor God Wu Ming roared stubbornly. Haha, I have a way to make you eat it. Yi Hao looked at Emperor God Wu Ming and laughed loudly. Oomph. Emperor God Wu Ming snorted coldly. Apparently, he did not believe Yi Hao. After all, he was the one with the mouth. Even if Yi Hao tortured him to death, he would not eat it. What could Yi Hao do? Yi Hao wore an inexplicable smile as he looked at the few old ancestors of Wu Ming divine nation. When Yi Hao looked at them, the few old ancestors could not help but panic. They were afraid of Yi Hao and took half a step back. If any of you feed him shit, I will spare his life. Yi Hao said to the 5 old ancestors of Wu Ming divine nation. Are you serious? The few old ancestors looked at the 10 buckets of feces. At this moment, the buckets of feces had become treasures in their eyes. After all, it was their chance to live. I am a man of my word. The few old ancestors looked at Yi Hao and realized that he was not lying to them. They immediately flew to the buckets of feces. What are you trying to do? I am the emperor of Wu Ming divine nation. Emperor God Wu Ming panicked when he saw the actions of the old ancestors. Your Majesty, I am sorry. We have no other choice. An old ancestor carried the wooden bucket and walked to Emperor God Wu Ming. Old ancestor, you can't do this to me. I am the Emperor God of Wu Ming divine nation. No. Under Emperor God Wu Ming's panicked gaze, an old ancestor walked in front of Emperor God Wu Ming and pinched open his mouth. He carried the bucket of feces and poured it into Emperor God Wu Ming's mouth. Suddenly, a stench filled the air. The old ancestor held his breath and resisted the urge to vomit. He poured the feces into Emperor God Wu Ming's mouth slowly. However, he was afraid that Yi Hao would find fault with him, so the patriarch was very careful. It was as if he didn't want to waste any of it. As for Emperor God Wu Ming, he was struggling with all his might. However, he was locked down by ancestors' power of martial arts. Pour out another bucket and you'll be able to live. Yi Hao looked at the patriarch with satisfaction. However, this kind of scene was indeed slightly disgusting. However, the person he was dealing with was God Emperor Wu Ming. This was revenge for God Emperor Mo. Even if it was disgusting, Yi Hao would still do it. Thank you, Your Majesty Yi Hao. When the patriarch heard Yi Hao's words, it was as if he had heard the sound of nature. A smile immediately appeared on his face. The other patriarchs all looked at that patriarch with envy. Blurg. As for the other bystanders, they were unable to accept this scene. Many of them even began to retch. After all, This was a living person eating shit. Even though they had lived for so long, this was the first time they had seen something like this. Furthermore, this was not just anyone eating shit. This was the famous God Emperor Wu Ming in the myriad countries continent. God Emperor Wu Ming being fed shit by a few patriarchs of the Wu Ming kingdom. This news would definitely cause a commotion in the myriad countries continent. Yihao, you're mighty. Yihao is mighty. Yihao is mighty. On the other hand, it was the soldiers of God Mo kingdom who were humiliated by God Emperor Wu Ming. Until now, they were still suppressing their anger. However, when they saw God Emperor Wu Ming's miserable look, bucket after bucket of shit was poured into God Emperor Wu Ming's mouth. The soldiers of God Mo kingdom felt their blood boiling as they looked at Yi Hao with admiration and shouted emotionally, "This lad I did not see wrongly." God Emperor Mo felt relieved when he saw God Emperor Wu Ming eating shit. After all, he was almost forced to eat shit by God Emperor Wu Ming. To him, that was an absolute humiliation. If not for Yi Hao's timely arrival, the one eating shit would not be God Emperor Wu Ming, but him. Looking at God Emperor Wu Ming's painful expression, God Emperor Mo let out a sigh of relief. This brat is really an eye for an eye, an eye for an eye. Yeah, look at how God Emperor Wu Ming ended up in such a state. I can't help but sigh at the impermanence of life. No matter who you offend, don't offend this lad. The patriarchs of Purple Sky Divine Kingdom kept looking at Yi Hao and God Emperor Wu Ming as they discussed softly. "Your Majesty Yi Hao, we have fed in the shit. Can you let us go now?" The few old ancestors of the Wu Ming divine nation finally poured all the excrement into the mouth of the Wu Ming divine emperor with tremendous effort. Then they looked at Yi Hao with a fawning look. "Cut off one of his arms or legs before you leave." Yi Hao pointed at God Emperor Wu Ming, who was lying on the ground vomiting. Hearing Yi Hao's words, God Emperor Wu Ming, who was vomiting, could no longer be bothered to vomit and shivered. He looked at the patriarchs coldly and said, "You have already messed up the order of the imperial court by doing this to me. If you hurt me again, will you be able to feel at ease?" Hearing God Emperor Wu Ming's words, the patriarchs' faces turned ugly because God Emperor Wu Ming was right. No matter what, God Emperor Wu Ming was the legitimate God Emperor of Wu Ming Kingdom. According to the teachings of their ancestors, their duty as patriarchs was to protect the past emperors. However, in order to survive, they had already done something disrespectful to God Emperor Wu Ming. If they were to cut off God Emperor Wu Ming's arms, they would not be able to turn back. After all, they were the patriarchs of Wu Ming Kingdom and the guardians of the emperor. In the end, not only did they not protect the emperor, they even hurt their own emperor. "Your Majesty Yi Hao, I wonder if we can change our request?" One of the patriarchs looked at Yi Hao cautiously and asked, "Do you have a choice in front of me?" Yi Hao looked at the patriarchs of Wu Ming Kingdom coldly and did not give them any face. The patriarchs looked at each other and nodded at the same time. As though they had made a decision, they took out their weapons and walked towards God Emperor Wu Ming. "You are the disgrace of Wu Ming Kingdom. You are not fit to be the patriarchs of Wu Ming Kingdom. Our ancestors will not let you off." Seeing that the patriarchs were really going to attack him, God Emperor Wu Ming was disheartened and shouted with an ashen face, "Your Majesty, you are right." The patriarchs suddenly turned around and launched their strongest attacks towards Yi Hao. No matter what, they had a bottom line. They had a tacit understanding. Therefore, they walked towards Yi Hao to let down Yi Hao's guard. After everyone had let down their guard, they would join forces to kill Yi Hao. This was because they were not only afraid of Yi Hao, but also God Emperor Mo and the patriarchs of Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. With these people around, they would not be able to gain the upper hand if they were to fight. However, as long as these people let down their guard, they would be able to attack Yi Hao. They believed that no matter how strong Yi Hao was, he would not be able to block the attacks of the five of them. As long as they could kill Yi Hao, the problem in front of them would naturally be solved. This was because they realized that no matter if it was Purple Sky Divine Kingdom or God Emperor Mo Kingdom, Yi Hao was their leader. In other words, The reason why these few forces could join forces to attack Wu Ming Kingdom was because of Yi Hao. Chapter 635. Old Ancestors, I have wronged you. Kill that bastard. Emperor God Wu Ming closed his eyes in disappointment. However, he realized that the old ancestors did not attack him. Instead, they turned around and attacked Yi Hao. Emperor God Wu Ming looked at Yi Hao with hatred in his eyes as he roared, "Your Majesty, we have no choice but to do so. We will definitely kill this lad and wash away the shame for your Majesty. Little bastard, go to hell." The old ancestors of Wu Ming Holy Nation shouted as they gathered their martial strength. They were ready to attack Yi Hao. Good timing. Yi Hao did not show the slightest hint of fear when he saw the patriarchs charging towards him. Instead, he was secretly delighted. What is this lad doing? Why does he look so weird? The old ancestors were disappointed when they did not see any fear on Yi Hao's face. They started to have doubts. "Yi Hao, be careful," Mo Jingfeng shouted anxiously when she saw the old ancestors rushing towards Yi Hao. Yi Hao, an expert. The soldiers started to worry about Yi Hao as they looked at Yi Hao anxiously. "Quick, help him." Emperor God Mo and the old ancestors of Purple Sky Divine Kingdom reacted quickly when they saw the old ancestors of Wu Ming Holy Nation attacking. "Well done, old ancestor. I knew that old ancestor had his reasons for doing so. Old ancestor, kill that little bastard and wash away the shame of Wu Ming Holy Nation. No matter how powerful that lad is, he will not be able to stop the attacks of the 5 old ancestors. Old ancestor, you will win." The soldiers of Wu Ming Holy Nation, who were in low spirits, were excited again as they shouted excitedly. Looking at the boiling martial strength around him, he realized that the space around him had been sealed off by the old ancestors of Wu Ming Holy Nation. If it had been someone else, even Emperor God Mo, who was a rank 4 ultimate martial god, he would have died. However, Yi Hao had a smile on his face. He suddenly clenched his fists and said, "I'll let you know what true martial strength is." One slash. Yi Hao roared. He immediately used the one slash that he had comprehended in the secret realm. Yi Hao took out the blood-stained dual sabers. The blood-stained dual sabers seemed to be able to sense the dangerous aura in the surroundings and actually emitted a rumbling sound. This saber was just a superficial martial skill that he had comprehended in the secret realm. However, the system's evaluation was that it was a super heavenly tribulation. This was definitely his strongest martial path. After using the saber, Yi Hao felt that more than half of the martial arts power in his body had been sucked away. However, he did not display his martial power. Instead, he poured it into the blood-scarred dual sabers. Looking at it with a naked eye, one would only feel that the blood-scarred dual sabers did not change. Yi Hao was speechless at the amount of martial Dao power that was drained. One had to know that even though he was a 9th order martial god, his martial Dao strength was not at the 9th order martial god realm. Instead, it was an entire realm above the 9th order martial god realm. With such a cultivation level, the amount of martial Dao power that could be stored was absolutely terrifying. However, it was this terrifying amount of martial Dao power that was drained by half in an instant. One had to know that when he used the earth-devouring palm, the amount of martial Dao power consumed was not more than 1%. Wouldn't that mean that if it was an ordinary peak martial god realm expert, or even an ultimate martial god realm expert, he would not even be able to use this saber technique? After Yi Hao used the saber, he instantly had a strange feeling that he had never felt before. It was as if any weapon in the world was not as powerful as his saber. This saber could fight the heavens and the earth. It was as if he was the only one in the world. Moreover, countless insights about saber intent appeared in Yi Hao's mind. Yi Hao's entire mind was immersed in a mysterious feeling as he comprehended the saber intent. However, Yi Hao did not realize that when he used the saber, the few Imperial soldiers below were using sabers as weapons. At that moment, all the sabers began to tremble and emit rumbling sounds. It was as if all the sabers were bowing towards Yi Hao. One with the saber, Heavenly Realm. When Emperor God Mo saw this, he was shocked and said in a daze, He did not expect that such a legendary thing would actually appear. "Grandfather, what is one with the saber, heavenly realm? Why haven't I heard of it before?" Mo Jingfeng looked around in shock. All the sabers were no longer under the control of their owners and were emitting rumbling sounds. This scene was very frightening to look at. Even Mo Jingfeng herself was looking at her surroundings vigilantly, because she was really afraid that if those sabers were out of control and started attacking, she would have nowhere to run. This is a legend. Legend has it that when a person reaches a certain level of understanding towards a certain weapon, such a situation would occur. Emperor God Mo looked at Yi Hao in the sky. Originally, he thought that Yi Hao had shocked him enough and that he had understood Yi Hao well enough. But now, it seemed that Yi Hao would only give him more and more surprises. He was unable to fully understand Yi Hao, because too many unbelievable things had happened to Yi Hao. Watch Yi Hao's attack carefully. If you can understand a thing or two from it, it will definitely be beneficial to you. When Emperor God Mo saw that Yi Hao had reached such a level, he knew that the few old ancestors of Wu Ming Divine Nation were no match for Yi Hao. Thus, God Emperor Mo stood at his original spot and didn't go up to help. Instead, he spoke to Mo Jingfeng. "What's going on? Why can't I control my saber? My saber is a saint weapon. It has recognized its owner. Why does it seem to be out of my control? How did Yi Hao do it? To control everyone's weapons, this is too terrifying." At this moment, all the soldiers who had sabers were shocked beyond words. No matter which empire they were from, they were all speechless. Everyone placed their gazes onto Yi Hao at this time, afraid that they would miss something. The bloodstained twin sabers in Yi Hao's hands looked very ordinary as they slowly slashed in all directions. Yi Hao's attack didn't seem to be flashy at all. It was just a simple slash. The slash looked as if Yi Hao had just slashed out casually. Many people looked at Yi Hao suspiciously. They didn't understand why Yi Hao was all talk and no action. How could a casual swing of the saber injure the 5 patriarchs? Only the experts in the ultimate martial god realm could see how terrifying Yi Hao's simple slash was. They could see the aura of death from the slash. It was a threat to their lives. At this moment, only the 5 old ancestors of Wu Ming Divine Nation could feel how powerful the slash was. They discovered that the instant Yi Hao used a martial skill, the martial skills they used were instantly locked down. It wasn't just their martial skills. They felt that they were locked. They wanted to move, but they couldn't. The 5 old ancestors only had eyes for the blood-stained dual sabers in Yi Hao's hands. Chapter 636. The 5 old ancestors could only watch as the crimson blade slit their necks. Everything seemed slow, but it happened in an instant. When the heads of the 5 old ancestors fell to the ground, everyone reacted. Why didn't our old ancestors dodge his attack when his attack was so slow? Have the 5 ancestors lost their minds? They died for nothing. It was such a simple attack, and the 5 old ancestors didn't even fight back. They were killed. At that moment, the soldiers of Endless Darkness Holy Nation went crazy when they saw the 5 old ancestors' bodies. The reason for that was because the 5 patriarchs were their guardians. Now that their guardians had been killed, it was even more hopeless for them to stay alive. However, what made them even more confused was why the 5 old ancestors didn't dodge Yi Hao's attack when it was so slow. How could he be so strong? The soldiers of Endless Darkness Holy Nation were in a daze as they muttered in disbelief. When the soldiers of Endless Darkness Holy Nation heard what Emperor God Wu Ming had said, they looked at Emperor God Wu Ming strangely. They didn't understand why Emperor God Wu Ming said that. Was Emperor God Wu Ming really scared out of his wits? One had to know that in their opinion, even an ordinary person, not a warrior, would be able to use that saber move. They couldn't tell how powerful such an ordinary attack was. "I, Endless Darkness, am dead." Emperor God Wu Ming looked up and sighed. His tone was filled with unwillingness, but there was nothing he could do. He didn't answer the soldiers because this was the difference in cultivation level. Even if he explained, they wouldn't understand, because even he could only see the trajectory of the saber just now. It was so fast that it was terrifying. The extreme state of fast was slow. That was why many people said that the attack was slow. However, none of the true experts of the extreme martial god realm dared to say that. This was because they had a feeling that they wouldn't be able to resist Yi Hao's attack at all. Soldiers of endless darkness, holy nation, listen up. Emperor God Wu Ming suddenly stood up and looked at the soldiers of endless darkness, holy nation, reluctantly. Every soldier was in low spirits, not to mention their fighting spirit. They were venting their dissatisfaction and discussing the death of their old ancestors. Although Emperor God Wu Ming was already in such a miserable state, his prestige was still present. Therefore, he immediately received the shouts of all the soldiers. All the soldiers drew their weapons. Now that the patriarch was dead, it was time for the final battle. Whether they lived or died, they could only fight with their backs against the wall. Put down your weapons and surrender. Emperor God Wu Ming didn't notice that his voice was trembling when he said this. 2 streams of tears flowed from his eyes. A god emperor cried. Emperor God Wu Ming recalled his glorious life. Up until now, he had never cried. This time, he could no longer hold it in. What? Hearing what Emperor God Wu Ming had said, be it the soldiers of Wu Ming Holy Kingdom or the remaining soldiers, all of them were stunned. Initially, they thought that the real war was coming and that Emperor God Wu Ming was going to fight to the death. However, they had never expected that Emperor God Wu Ming would actually give the order to surrender. Your Majesty, let's fight it out with them. Your Majesty, why are we surrendering? Although we are outnumbered, we can still fight. Your Majesty, we will only know who is stronger and who is weaker after a fight. We can't surrender now. Emperor God Wu Ming wasn't an emperor god for nothing. He had many trusted generals under him, and all of them wanted to fight. This is my last decree. Emperor God Wu Ming's tone was unquestionable. In fact, it wasn't that he didn't want to fight. After seeing how powerful Yi Hao was, he was completely subdued by Yi Hao. He knew that if he continued to fight, he would only let the soldiers of Wu Ming Holy Kingdom die in vain, and it wouldn't change the outcome. Since this was the case, as an emperor god, why didn't he find a way out for his subordinates? Your Majesty Yi Hao, I hope that you will treat them well. Emperor God Wu Ming looked at Yi Hao after seeing that all the soldiers had put down their weapons. Unsurprisingly, Emperor God Wu Ming surrendered to Yi Hao and not to Emperor God Zetian or Emperor God Mo, because he knew that his subordinates would only have a good future if they followed Yi Hao. If they followed anyone else, they would definitely end up in Yi Hao's hands. Since this was the case, why didn't they follow Yi Hao from the start? Moreover, even if they were given to Emperor God Zetian or Emperor God Mo, the two of them wouldn't dare to accept them. Yi Hao was also surprised by Emperor God Wu Ming's decision. He didn't expect Emperor God Wu Ming to be so magnanimous at the last moment. Putting aside everything that had happened before, Emperor God Wu Ming was already considered a good emperor god to think for his subordinates at the last moment. According to the thinking of a normal person, with millions of soldiers in hand, they would definitely fight to the death. However, Emperor God Wu Ming didn't do that. Looking at the sincerity in Emperor God Wu Ming's eyes, Yi Hao nodded. As long as they are sincere to me, I will treat them all equally. Then, I thank your Majesty Yi Hao. Let me remind your Majesty that the upper world is dangerous. I hope that you will be careful. What do you mean? Hearing Emperor God Wu Ming's words, Yi Hao's eyes turned cold. He thought that Emperor God Wu Ming's words weren't said casually. There must be something hidden within. I'm only saying this much. Emperor God Wu Ming shook his head. He then looked at his subordinates and said reluctantly, Goodbye, my people. Goodbye, Myriad Kingdom Continent. Goodbye, Wu Ming Holy Nation. You can live. Yi Hao looked at Emperor God Wu Ming's appearance. The killing intent in his heart wasn't as strong as it was at the beginning. After all, this was a war of kingship. The winner would be the king, and the loser would be the bandit. No one could change this. However, Emperor God Wu Ming's final actions changed his opinion of Emperor God Wu Ming. After all, a person who could think for his subordinates, how bad could he be? Such a person was definitely worthy of respect. Haha, I thank your majesty, Yi Hao, for your kind intentions. However, what's the point of living as a walking corpse? I will only feel worse if I watch my country being destroyed. Emperor God Wu Ming said. He then pulled out his sword and cut his own throat. Your majesty, many soldiers of Wu Ming holy nation cried out in grief the moment Emperor God Wu Ming died. That's right. At the last moment, Emperor God Wu Ming sacrificed his life for them. This moved them completely. Bury Emperor God Wu Ming with the highest ceremony in all the holy nations. Bury him according to the standards of an emperor god. Seeing Emperor God Wu Ming commit suicide, Yi Hao gave the order immediately. Those who were worthy of his respect would naturally receive the best treatment. Thank you, your majesty. Hearing Yi Hao's order, the soldiers of Wu Ming holy nation immediately shed tears of gratitude. After all, there weren't many people who could treat their enemies as well as Yi Hao. Chapter 637. Yi Hao used 3 days of coercion and bribery to raise everyone's loyalty to more than 80%. The Wu Ming god nation that was famous in the myriad kingdom continent for hundreds of thousands of years was officially declared dead. But before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. That damned unfilial son. How dare he do such a thing? At this moment, God Emperor Mo's face was filled with anger as he looked at Yi Hao apologetically. Yi Hao, leave this matter to this old man. This old man will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. God Emperor Mo looked at Yi Hao and said. At this moment, Yi Hao's face was gloomy. I will personally deal with this matter. God Emperor Mo swallowed his saliva as his face was filled with guilt. This matter is all Mo Xian's fault. Those soldiers must have been bewitched by that unfilial son. Can you not hurt those soldiers? Yi Hao did not speak. At this moment, he only wanted to tear Mo Xian into pieces. Because news had just spread. Mo Xian had used some unknown method to ally with the remaining forces of Jintian God Nation. But that wasn't the end of it. What was even more suicidal was that he suddenly sent troops to attack the Violet Heaven God Kingdom and capture the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian. He had even threatened to kill Yi Hao, an Imperial Ant, and Yi Batian if he did not surrender. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. Yi Hao's killing intent surged. Everyone attack. Yi Hao ordered. Then Yi Hao looked at God Emperor Mo. God Emperor Mo, don't follow me. I'm afraid you'll feel uncomfortable when the time comes. I'll go with you personally. This old man will personally kill that unfilial son. At the same time, I'll represent the entire Mo God Nation to submit to you. There will no longer be an Mo God Nation in this world. This old man pleads your majesty not to kill your own soldiers. At this moment, God Emperor Mo had made his decision. He knew that resistance would be futile. Moreover, Yi Hao's goal was to unify the myriad kingdom continent. Rather than making things difficult, he might as well surrender. Moreover, he knew that if Mo Xian went against Yi Hao, he would not have a good ending. After all, both the heaven-shaking God Emperor and the profound God Emperor had died at the hands of Yi Hao. Why did he have to oppose Yi Hao? Right now, he wasn't worried about Mo Stain's life or death, but the lives of the Ink God Nation soldiers. He was already bitterly disappointed in Ink. But the soldiers of the divine Ink Nation were all personally groomed by him. They were all sentimental. Although these soldiers would belong to Yi Hao if they joined Yi Hao, it was still better than sacrificing them for nothing. Emperor God Mo, you've really made up your mind. Yi Hao looked at Emperor God Mo in surprise. However, his expression was solemn as he asked, because if God Emperor Mo did that, he would be able to reduce the entanglement in his heart. Because no one can stop the unification of the 10,000 countries continent. However, he had that kind of relationship with Mo Jingfang. Furthermore, God Emperor Mo had helped him before. A drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. This was Yi Hao's principle. Therefore, this gave Yi Hao a difficult problem. Should he make a move against the Ink God Nation? After all, if the Ink God Nation was unwilling to surrender, he could only rely on his military strength to suppress them. But if he relied on his military strength to suppress them, he would feel uneasy. But now that God Emperor Mo took the initiative to suggest it, he would remove the knot in his heart. As for God Emperor Mo's question, it wasn't that he couldn't agree to it. What he was angry about was that Mo Xian had to touch his own family. If he wanted to kill Mo Xian, even the heavenly emperor wouldn't be able to stop him. As for those soldiers, they were merely commanded by Mo Xian. They didn't have the right to refuse. Therefore, he could kill them or not. But these people had touched his family. That was different. Even if they were just following Mo Xian's orders, they couldn't do it, because they couldn't touch his family. However, looking at God Emperor Mo's face filled with anticipation and even pleading, Yi Hao sighed, "I'll try my best." Hearing Yi Hao's words, God Emperor Mo knew that he didn't have to say anything more. "Your Majesty, that Yi Hao will definitely bring his army over. Is it really okay for us to kidnap his parents?" In the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom's palace, an old ancestor asked Mo Xian worriedly, "What's there to be afraid of? His parents are in my hands. I don't believe that he won't compromise." Mo Xian snorted coldly. The past few days of Mo Xian could be said to be the most exciting days of his life. After returning to the Divine Ink Nation with a few old ancestors, he used ruthless methods to control all the experts of the Divine Ink Nation. That wasn't the end. He used a huge temptation and at the same time made use of Yi Hao's killing of Heaven-shaking God Emperor as a catalyst to subdue the remaining forces of the Heaven-shaking God Nation. And now, the number of experts in his hands was much more than when the Divine Ink Nation was at its peak. Originally, this was more or less enough. He could sit on a mountain and watch the tigers fight. He could watch the battle between Yi Hao and the Wu Ming God Nation. But who would have thought that not long after, he received news that Yi Hao had killed Wu Ming God Emperor and the old ancestors of the Wu Ming God Nation. At the same time, he subdued all the soldiers of the Wu Ming God Nation. When he heard this news, he panicked a little, because even if it wasn't because of the relationship between Yi Hao and Mo Jingfang, just based on the fact that he left with the army at the crucial moment of the battle between God Emperor Mo and the Wu Ming God Nation, Yi Hao would definitely not let him off easily. Moreover, he felt that with God Emperor Mo's temper, he would definitely not let him off. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but scold Wu Ming God Emperor for being useless. He couldn't even kill Yi Hao. Although he complained, it was useless. But he didn't want to give up the throne that he had just obtained. After all, the feeling of being the emperor for the past few days was simply too great. And if he lost the throne, his ending would be incomparably tragic. Therefore, he thought of a risky move, which was to force Yi Hao to submit. Since he had already reached this stage, he wasn't afraid of offending Yi Hao anymore. Therefore, he directly sent troops to attack the Purple Sky God Nation and captured the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian. He believed that with the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian in his hands, Yi Hao wouldn't dare to act rashly. Let's go and take a look in the prison. When he thought of the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian, Emoji felt a little uneasy and said to the old ancestor beside him. Now, that Emoji had specially requested for an old ancestor to follow by his side to protect his safety. One could see how deep Emoji's fear of Yi Hao was. Emoji passed through many prisons, each of which was heavily guarded. When he reached the deepest part of the prison, 2 old ancestors were summoned. 2 old ancestors, did anything happen? Emoji looked at the 2 old ancestors and asked. The 2 old ancestors immediately replied, "Don't worry, Your Majesty. With the 2 of us watching, nothing will happen." "That's good. Open the door and let me in to take a look." Emoji was relieved after hearing the old ancestors' words. After all, the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian were his trump cards. Whether he lived or died completely depended on the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian. He believed that with Yi Hao's filial piety, he would definitely obediently submit to him. "How's life here, Imperial Ant?" Emoji walked into the prison and looked at the Imperial Ant and Yi Batian who were tied up with special chains and asked jokingly. Chapter 638. Slap. Hearing the Imperial Ant's curse, Mo did not hold back and walked forward to slap her. Stinking woman, do you really think you're still my imperial aunt? You're just a prisoner now, a chess piece of mine. Mo said with disdain. But you're still quite beautiful. You're indeed the imperial aunt of the purple sky, divine kingdom. I wonder if it's a different feeling when doing that. Although the imperial aunt was not young, she maintained herself very well. Her skin was very white, no different from a young girl's skin. In fact, it was much fairer. Moreover, the imperial aunt had the temperament of a superior, which made people want to conquer her. The more Mo looked at the imperial aunt, the more the evil fire in her heart boiled. Mo looked around and saw that there was no one around. Suddenly, she laughed lewdly. Beauty, please serve this emperor well. You dare. The imperial aunt's eyes turned cold as she shouted. No matter what, the imperial aunt had experienced more than Mo. Moreover, the aura that she had cultivated for a long time, although she did not have the slightest strength at this moment, she still scared Mo. When Mo heard the imperial aunt shout, she subconsciously took half a step back. Then, Mo reacted. Humph, you don't have any cultivation at all. Why should I be afraid of you? I'll sleep with you first. Thinking of this, Mo's heart hardened, and she wanted to take off the imperial aunt's clothes. Cough, your majesty. At this moment, the old ancestor suddenly coughed behind her. What's the matter? Mo was very unhappy that her interest was disturbed. She asked coldly. The old ancestor wrinkled his eyes. He did not expect that at this time, Mo still did not do her job and still had the leisure to do this kind of thing. He did not know whether it was right or wrong to let this kind of person be the divine emperor of divine Emperor Mo. However, the old ancestor suppressed the dissatisfaction in his heart and said that Yihao has already brought an army to the border. Your Majesty, please lead the army to stop them. I know. Watch her carefully. Although Mo was unhappy that she could not sleep with the imperial aunt, she knew what was more important. After speaking to the old ancestor, she tidied up her clothes and left the dungeon. Yihao, you brat, if you want to save your parents, kneel before this emperor. Mo arrived in front of the two armies under the protection of the patriarch. Although Mo was prepared, he was still shocked when he saw the soldiers behind Yihao. This was because the number of experts behind Yihao definitely exceeded the number of experts he had. But when she remembered that she had the imperial aunt and Yi Batian in her hands, the fear in her heart was instantly expelled. As long as he had imperial aunt and Yi Batian in his hands, he had nothing to fear. Unfilial son, stop your evil deeds. Hurry up and release him. God Emperor Mo suddenly walked out from the crowd and pointed at Mo angrily. It's His Majesty. His Majesty is still alive. But didn't the second prince say that His Majesty had passed away? What's going on? Did His Majesty lie to us? Upon seeing God Emperor Mo's appearance, the Mo Shun Nation's camp immediately broke out into a commotion. Hearing the commotion from the army behind him, Mo coldly shouted, "Silence!" In order to cooperate with Mo, the two patriarchs beside Mo immediately released their aura. When the soldiers of the Mo Shun Nation heard Mo's cold shout and felt the aura from his body, they could only keep quiet. But each and every one of them looked at Mo, wanting to get an answer from him. Mo knew that it wasn't easy to be perfunctory at this moment, so he gathered his emotions and reprimanded God Emperor Mo. Father, you have been bewitched by Yihao. It's time for you to wake up. Your son has never thought of seizing your position, but your son will definitely not watch the Mo Shun Nation be lost in your hands. As long as father doesn't care about the matter between your son and Yihao, when this matter is over, your son will definitely welcome father back to the throne. Emoji said a lot of things with great emotion. In short, the meaning was that God Emperor Mo had been bewitched by Yihao. He was afraid that God Emperor Mo would give the Mo Shun Nation to Yihao for nothing. So he had no choice but to usurp the throne. But as long as God Emperor Mo didn't stand on Yihao's side, he was willing to return the throne. So that's the case. Second Godson has really put in a lot of effort. I didn't expect that His Majesty would be fooled by Yi Hao. But fortunately, Second Godson is reasonable. Luckily, Second Godson is here. Otherwise, the emotion nation would have been taken away by Yi Hao. I've said that Second Godson must have his reasons for seizing the throne. Otherwise, the patriarchs wouldn't have supported him. Hearing the discussions of the soldiers behind him, Emoji was secretly happy. He knew that his words had won over many people's hearts. Emoji wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. He had to establish his perfect image in the hearts of the people. As for returning the throne to God Emperor Emo, that was simply T. It was absolutely impossible. At the end of his words, Emo even pretended to touch his eyes as though he was crying. Unfilial son, you're really an unfilial son. God Emperor Emo didn't expect Emoji to be so good at acting. With just a few words, he had won over the hearts of the people. God Emperor Emo was furious, but he couldn't do anything about it. Listening carefully, God Emperor Emo was so angry that he was fuming with rage. Your Majesty, please listen to Second Godson. He's doing this for the good of the Emo Shun Nation. Your Majesty, please wake up. Don't be bewitched by Yi Hao. Don't be stubborn. Your Majesty, Second Godson is a good person. You can't ignore his advice. Hearing the words of the soldiers, Emoji was even more delighted. He pretended to wipe his tears. Father, you're making things difficult for me if you continue to stand on the side of the enemy. God Emperor Emo was so angry that he felt as though his lungs were about to explode. Grandpa Emo, you don't have to reason with him. You're just looking for trouble. Looking at God Emperor Mo's angry face, Yi Hao couldn't help but advise. Then what should we do now? God Emperor Emo asked worriedly. After all, Yi Hao's parents were captured. He felt extremely guilty. He never thought that his son would be so rebellious. He even said that it was natural for him to usurp the throne. He originally wanted to advise Emoji to surrender. He might be able to keep his life. After all, Emoji was still his son. Even if his bones were broken, his tendons were still connected. But from the looks of it, Emoji didn't want any chances at all. Let's start the war. Those who surrender will be spared. Those who resist will be killed. Yi Hao looked at the camp of the Emotion Nation and said solemnly, But your parents? God Emperor Emo looked at Yi Hao worriedly. If Yi Hao recklessly started a war, there was no guarantee that Emoji would be driven to desperate action and do something out of line. It's about time. Yi Hao looked at the direction of Zetian City and revealed a smile. Chapter 639. At this moment, there were dozens of heaven-devouring rats moving crazily under Zetian City. Behind these heaven-devouring rats, there was a young man who was following the heaven-devouring rats. That's right, this was Yi Hao's original body. As for the one who was chatting with Emperor God Emo in front of the two armies, it was just his clone. The reason why he had a clone above was to attract Emo Xian's attention. Yi Hao held a map in his hand. It was the layout of Zetian City. Yi Hao was afraid that Emo Xian would be on guard, so he relied on the heaven-devouring rats to travel underground. There's still 3 dungeons left. Let's take a look at this first. Yi Hao had not been idle. He had rushed to Zetian City before the army arrived. However, Zetian City was indeed the imperial capital of Zetian Divine Kingdom. Not to mention the size of the city, there were hundreds of dungeons and prisons. Until now, he had searched through hundreds of prison cells, but he still could not find his parents. The moment he could not find his parents, Yi Hao felt uneasy. Emo Xian, I will not let you off easily. Yi Hao's killing intent rose. Old 5, did you hear that? Did anything happen? In the dungeon where Imperial Ant and Yi Batian were locked, one of the 2 old ancestors suddenly opened his eyes and asked, Movement. When Old 5 heard Old 4's words, he immediately released his thought. Suddenly, his gaze froze, and he transmitted his thought to Old 4. Underground. Old 4 had sensed it long ago. Without batting an eyelid, he held his weapon in his hand and stared at the ground. Attack. After a long time, Old 4 suddenly shouted. The two of them attacked the ground at the same time. Rumble! Under their attacks, the ground was like tofu, easily shattering into powder. One had to know that this was the ground of Zetion City. It was specially made, so its defense was naturally strong. However, it could not block the attacks of the two. This was the strength of the ultimate martial god realm. There seems to be blood. You should be dead. Old 5, go and take a look. Old 4 looked at the blood seeping out from the ground and said. Old 5 nodded and carefully went forward to check. Bang! Just as OL 5 approached, a figure suddenly charged out from the ground and slammed into Old 5. OL 5 didn't even have the chance to react. Like a kite with a broken string, he flew out and crashed into the ground. After struggling for a second, he died. OL 5, seeing Old 5 fall to the ground, OL 4 roared and attacked Yi Hao. Yi Hao glared at number 4 coldly. You're asking for it. Yi Hao could no longer control the rage in his heart. Just like when he attacked OL 5 earlier, Yi Hao used his full strength without holding back. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to kill an ultimate martial god with a single punch. Yi Hao originally thought that OL 4 was really not afraid of death and would charge forward. Who knew that OL 4 would suddenly change directions halfway and run away? Try to run? Yi Hao sneered when he saw Lao Ci's actions. No one in the ultimate martial god realm would be able to escape from him. Thousand needles break. OL 4 sensed the movement behind him and became nervous. He didn't expect Yi Hao to be so fast that he almost caught up with him. Without hesitation, OL 4 used his famous hidden weapon. The hidden weapon he used was a magic needle made of special materials. Each needle was at the divine level, and he had spent a lot of resources to make almost 1,000 of them. He would not use them unless he had no other choice. Moreover, he only needed one needle to launch a sneak attack on an expert of the same level and seriously injure him. Moreover, he had smeared a special poison on the needles. As long as someone touched the poison, they would be paralyzed and unable to use their martial arts power. This time, he sensed the aura of death from Yi Hao's body. Therefore, he was worried that he didn't have enough magic needles to hurt Yi Hao. So, he endured the pain and threw all his magic needles at Yi Hao. Such a petty trick. Looking at the densely packed needles that were shooting towards him, Yi Hao did not sense the slightest bit of danger. Yi Hao didn't defend himself. He ignored the magic needles and rushed toward OL 4. Ha ha ha, you're courting death. OL 4 was stunned when he saw Yi Hao's action. Then he was overjoyed. At first, he was worried that the magic needles wouldn't hurt Yi Hao. However, Yi Hao had underestimated his magic needles and was courting death. He couldn't blame OL 4. Old 4 seemed to have already seen the scene of Yi Hao being pierced by 1,000 needles. He couldn't help but stop in his tracks. OL 4 looked at Yi Hao mockingly, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. However, he was stunned in the next second. Bang! 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 OL 4 looked at OL 4 expectantly, and the countless magic needles hit Yi Hao's body. However, they fell to the ground as if they had hit steel. On the other hand, Yi Hao wasn't hurt at all. This. OL 4 looked at Yi Hao as if he was looking at a monster. He was speechless. He wondered if his needles had been swapped. Those were magic needles. How could they be so weak against Yi Hao? Run. OL 4 reacted quickly. Since the magic needles couldn't hurt Yi Hao, then he was no match for Yi Hao. OL 4 didn't hesitate anymore. He turned around and started to run. You still want to run? Yi Hao waved his hand, and a bunch of magic needles appeared in his hand. Yi Hao shot the magic needles at OL 4's back. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The magic needles pierced through the air and made the air explode. No! Hearing the piercing sound behind him, OL 4 felt that his life was in danger. He's courting death. Old 4th regretted that he had not expected that the needle he had shot out would not only fail to attack Yi Hao, but instead become a weapon for Yi Hao to attack him. OL 4 didn't dare to look back. He was afraid that if he did, he would slow down. Hence, he could only rely on his sharp hearing to dodge. Whoosh! Suddenly, OL 4 groaned. His body stiffened and he fell to the ground. If one looked closely, they would see a silver needle on his shoulder. OL 4 was extremely regretful. However, he couldn't move his body. He knew that the poison he had applied to the needle had taken effect. For watched as Yihao walked towards him. His eyes were filled with panic and fear. For wanted to beg for mercy, but he couldn't open his mouth. At this moment, for was lying on the ground in a vegetative state. Yihao glanced at for. How dare you capture my parents? Die, Yihao said in a low voice. At the same time, he kicked for's head. For's head exploded like a ripe watermelon under Yihao's kick. Chapter 640. Yi Batian, who was covered in wounds, slowly opened his eyes when he heard his aunt's voice. It's all because I'm useless. I couldn't protect you, and even cause trouble for my son. Yi Batian panted heavily and said weakly, If that Jian really wants to use me to threaten my son, I'd rather kill myself. I'll accompany you, his aunt said gently. She sounded like a woman who followed her husband's lead. Although this was partly because of their deep love for each other, it was more because of her love for Yihao. As parents, they did not want to see someone use them to threaten their son. Since they could not help their son, they would try their best not to implicate him. They were still alive because they wanted to see Yihao one last time. Bam! At that moment, the door of the dungeon was kicked open and a figure walked in. Father, mother. Yihao looked at his tied-up parents and could no longer hold back his tears. He immediately went forward to untie them. Yi Batian and his aunt were surprised when they heard Yihao's voice. Then, a joyful smile appeared on their faces. When Yihao untied Yi Batian immediately gasped. Yihao then realized that Yi Batian's body was badly mutilated. In some places, white bones could be seen. When Yihao saw this, his eyes turned cold and murderous intent radiated from his body. He asked coldly, Father, who did this? It was the two patriarchs and Jian from the Mozen nation. They scolded you and your father was angry. So he retorted. That's how he ended up being tortured, the aunt said with heartache as she looked at Yi Batian's injuries. Jian, that bastard. I must kill him. The aunt was furious when she thought about how she had almost been raped by Jian. She was the aunt of an ultimate martial god. When had she ever been humiliated like this? Father, mother, leave this matter to your son. Yihao had already sentenced Ji and the other patriarchs to death. This was because anyone who dared to touch his loved ones would not be allowed to live in this world. This was his bottom line. Yihao took out some healing pills and fed them all to Yi Batian. Dad, how do you feel? Yihao looked at Yi Batian with concern. Imperial Aunt held Yihao's hand and looked at Yi Batian with concern. Her eyes were filled with love. After a while, Yi Batian opened his eyes and smiled. My internal and external injuries are basically healed. I'll be fine after a few days of rest. That's good. Hearing that Yi Batian was fine, Yihao was relieved. Mother, where's ZMO? Why haven't I seen her for so long? Yihao had thought that ZMO had been in seclusion in Ztian City. He had too many trivial matters on hand and had not had the chance to ask. However, Ztian City had been occupied by Ji and he had not seen ZMO so he could not help but worry. Who knew that when Imperial Aunt heard ZMO her face instantly turned ugly. That girl, Sai. I'll tell you when the war is over. Hearing Imperial Aunt's words, Yihao's heart trembled. He felt that something must have happened. Otherwise, Imperial Aunt would not have such an expression. Father, mother, you can rest in my special space for a while. I'll come back to find you after I kill Ji. Seeing that his mother was unwilling to say more, Yihao did not pursue the matter. He only wanted to end the war quickly and then ask about ZMO's whereabouts. This was because ZMO was the first girl he had fallen in love with in this strange world. In Yihao's heart, he also had a special kind of love for ZMO. It was even stronger than his love for other women. It could be said that Yihao's love for each of his current women was the same. However, his love for ZMO was a little more. No, mother wants to kill Ji personally. Imperial Aunt rejected Yihao's suggestion directly. All right then. Since his mother had said so, Yihao could not refuse anymore. Come on, my Yihao. Kneel down before me. Maybe I'll be happy and let you see your parents. Emoji looked at Yi Hao arrogantly. He believed that Yi Hao would definitely submit. Everyone attack. Yi Hao immediately gave the order to attack. Yi Hao, your parents are still in Emoji's hands. Emperor Zetian immediately advised. That's right. No matter what, we have to save them first. Emperor God, Emo also said anxiously. Yi Hao, I understand second uncle's character. He's someone who's capable of doing anything. Emo Jingfang added. They were afraid that Yi Hao would act rashly and force Emoji to do something desperate. It would not be good if Emoji heard Imperial Ant and Yi Batian. Don't worry, I've already saved them. Yi Hao's avatar said with a smile. What? You've already saved them? Everyone was shocked, and they could not believe Yi Hao's words. Do you still remember that I asked you for the layout of Purple Sky City? Yi Hao said with a smile when he saw the look of disbelief on Emperor Zetian's face. Although I've given you the layout of the city, Emoji will definitely keep a close eye on your parents. He's already on guard. How did you save them without Emoji noticing? Emperor Zetian asked a question that puzzled everyone. Looking at everyone's curious faces, Yi Hao smiled and pointed to the ground. Everyone looked at the ground, and they were even more shocked. Emo Jingfang asked directly, You've been with us all this time. How did you save them from underground? You should know that the ground of Purple Sky City is specially built. Even an ordinary martial god would not be able to dig it. How did you manage to dig a tunnel and save them without anyone noticing? Emperor Zetian was equally shocked. Fortunately, Yi Hao was on their side. Otherwise, it would be too terrifying. Emperor Zetian was very confident in the defense of Purple Sky City, especially the ground. However, Yi Hao was able to enter Purple Sky City from underground. Didn't that mean that Purple Sky City's defense was nothing to Yi Hao? Yi Hao did not have time to explain because the battle had already begun. Close to 3 million martial sages and 30,000 martial gods charged towards Purple Sky City. With so many experts, the martial power they brought along seemed to tear the entire space apart. As for those with low cultivation, they had already escaped from this place. Fortunately, this was the top region of the Myriad Kingdom continent. Otherwise, the space would not be able to withstand the attacks of so many experts. The remaining forces of Divine Ink Nation and Jintian Divine Nation added together made up half of Yi Hao's experts. However, it was obvious that Divine Ink Nation and Jintian Divine Nation were at a disadvantage. God Emperor Mo, what's going on? Didn't you say that Yi Hao would not attack? What's going on? The current God Emperor of Jintian Divine Nation looked at Mo Ji anxiously and asked. Chapter 641. Emperor God Mo Ji. Quickly think of a solution. The new Emperor God of Jintian Divine Nation was getting more and more anxious. This was because the two armies on the battlefield had already clashed. It was a completely one-sided battle. Their soldiers could only resist with all their might and keep retreating. They did not have the strength to fight back at all. Shut up. Emoji, who was already impatient, said impatiently when he heard the new Emperor God of Jintian Divine Nation's incessant nagging. The new Emperor God of Jintian Divine Nation swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. I don't know why this brat didn't care about the comfort of his parents and initiated a war. Emoji frowned. He was also puzzled. Old ancestor, capture his parents for me. I don't believe that this brat won't submit. Emoji ordered the old ancestor beside him. The old ancestor knew that this was no small matter and immediately flew toward the Purple Sky City. Emperor God Moji, will it really work to capture that brat's parents? If it doesn't work, I will surrender. The new Emperor God of Jintian Divine Nation said worriedly. Emoji's face turned cold when he heard the new Emperor God of Jintian Divine Nation's words. He wanted to kill the new Emperor God of Jintian Divine Nation. Fortunately, he was still calm and knew that this was not the right time to make a move. Emoji hid his killing intent and said with a smile, Don't worry, Emperor God of Jintian Divine Nation. Why would I harm you? If I did, I wouldn't be able to live either. Seeing the sincerity on Mo's face, the new emperor god of Jintian of I Nation felt that Mo's words made sense. He nodded and said, I hope so. Damn it, why aren't they back yet? Mo said impatiently after waiting for a long time. Not good, your majesty. At this moment, the old ancestor suddenly returned. Mo frowned when he saw that the old ancestor had returned alone. He asked, why did you come back alone? Where are that brat's parents? The new emperor god of Jintian of I Nation was also puzzled and looked at the old ancestor. After all, this was a matter of life and death. The patriarch panted heavily, still in shock, and said, Old 5 was killed, and the person was taken away. What? Hearing those words, the crowd's expressions all changed. Ancestor, you're joking, right? Mo fell as if his body had fallen into a bottomless ice cave. However, a look of disbelief immediately appeared on his face. I made such a tight arrangement, and there are even 2 patriarchs protecting me. How can there be no movement at all? Patriarch, you're not joking with me, right? At this moment, Mo's eyes were red, and he grabbed the ancestor's shoulder as if he had gone mad. Your Majesty, please calm down. Even though Mo was a god emperor, his seniority and strength were lower than hers. In front of so many people, Mo grabbed his shoulder and questioned him. This made the old ancestor feel very embarrassed, so he couldn't help but remind him. Calm down? How can I calm down? That little bastard's parents were my trump card. Now that my trump card is gone, what do you want me to do? Mo roared with bloodshot eyes. Seeing that Mo Stain had already lost his rationality, the old ancestor could only say, I saw a hole in the ground of the dungeon. Someone must have rescued him from there. It's over, it's over. I don't want to play with you anymore. I want to surrender. I want to surrender. Hearing the old ancestor's words, the new god emperor of Jintian's last hope was extinguished. He muttered dispiritedly, as if he had lost his soul. You want to surrender? Wishful thinking. You and I are in the same boat. You and I kidnapped that kid's parents. Do you think that kid will let you go if you surrender? Mo sneered when he heard the new god emperor of Jintian's words. Then what should I do? Tell me what to do. I don't want to die. The new god emperor of Jintian roared. Besides, I didn't participate in the kidnapping of Yi Hao's parents. It was all you're doing. Mo sneered. So what? Do you think that little bastard will listen to your explanation? The new god emperor of Jintian was anxious, but there was nothing he could do. Seeing the new god emperor of Jintian's expression, Mo smiled and said, Don't worry, I have a backup plan. I won't allow Yi Hao to be so arrogant. God Emperor Mo, do you still have a backup plan? Hearing Mo's words, the new god emperor of Jintian couldn't help but have a glimmer of hope. Even the remaining 3 elders of the divine ink kingdom looked at the ink stains in surprise. They had never heard of Mo having a backup plan. Come out, my allies. Mo flew into the sky proudly and shouted. King Kong clan is here to help God Emperor Mo. Black Wolf clan is here to help God Emperor Mo. Giant Tiger clan is here to help God Emperor Mo. Giant Dragon clan is here to help God Emperor Mo. Black Deer clan is here to help God Emperor Mo. At this moment, sounds suddenly rang out around the purple sky city, followed by the roars of beasts. It's the Beast Clan. Emoji, you can actually get the Beast Clan to come out. An old ancestor looked at Emoji in shock, and even called him by his name. And, hearing the old ancestor call him by his name, Emoji couldn't help but frown. The old ancestor felt Emoji's sharp gaze and knew that Emoji was able to get the Beast Clan to come out. That was why he couldn't fall out with Emoji at this moment. The old ancestor immediately apologized with a face full of smiles. Your Majesty, please calm down. This old official made a mistake. At this moment, the old ancestor no longer addressed himself as an old ancestor like before. Instead, he addressed himself as an old official. This was clearly the rhythm of Mo, lowering his head to express his goodwill. Your Majesty, Mo.G. How did you do it? We are saved. The new God Emperor of Heaven, shaking God Emperor, had a joyful expression, and the dispirited look on his face disappeared instantly. Didn't you want to surrender to that little bastard Yi Hao? Mo.G. raised his eyebrows and said coldly. The new God Emperor of Heaven, shaking God Emperor's face, changed again and again. Although he was unhappy, he was still a God Emperor. What right did Mo.G. have to speak to him in such a tone? But when he thought about how these Beast Clan reinforcements were all because of Mo.G.'s face, if his heaven-shaking God nation wanted to get out of danger, he could only rely on Mo.G. Your Majesty, Mo.G., that was just a joke. You don't have to take it seriously. My alliance with Your Majesty, Mo.G., is sincere. How could I betray our alliance? That's great. Although Mo.G. agreed with the new God Emperor of Heaven, shaking God Emperor on the surface, he had already sentenced him to death in his heart. It was just that now wasn't the time to make a move. Mo.G. looked at the battlefield. At this moment, the soldiers on his side were being suppressed by Yi Hao's people and were still retreating. Chapter 642. Oh no, why are the beasts attacking? This is bad. Emperor God, Mo's face changed when he saw the beasts appearing from all directions. Judging from their auras, the weakest of the beasts were martial sages, and there were quite a number of martial gods. One should know that the beasts were huge and much stronger than humans. Although there were only a few 100,000 beasts, they were not to be underestimated. Every single one of the beasts attacked with their own bodies, and they were fearless. Every single one of them could defend against a few martial artists of the same cultivation realm. Rumble! At this moment, the ground started to shake. It immediately attracted everyone's attention. Is that a skeleton? Impossible! How could an undead spirit appear here? Emperor God Mo frowned when he saw the skeleton that was close to 100 feet tall. Mo Jingfong suddenly said, "Grandfather, this skeleton looks familiar. It looks like the diamond skeleton that I bumped into when I was gathering herbs for you." Kill! As soon as the giant skeleton appeared, dozens of martial gods appeared and attacked the skeleton. Ha ha, a bunch of ants die. The giant skeleton let out a weird laugh. It then raised its hand and slapped the group of martial gods. Boom! With just one hit, the martial gods were sent flying. They did not have the strength to fight back in the hands of the giant skeleton. So strong, let me have a go. Emperor God Mo was shocked when he saw that the dozens of martial gods were not a match for the giant skeleton. However, he was not afraid and rushed forward. Go and help Emperor God Mo. Emperor God Zetian said when he saw Emperor God Mo attacking. The few old ancestors of the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom rushed forward when they received the order from Emperor God Zetian. Haha, it's old man Mo. You're not dead yet. Let me send you on your way. The giant skeleton recognized Emperor God Mo when he saw him. It let out a weird laugh and hammered at Emperor God Mo. We don't know who will send who. Come on. Emperor God Mo's face turned serious. The reason being that the giant skeleton had easily eliminated more than 10 martial god realm experts. It was obvious that the giant skeleton's strength was not to be underestimated. As such, God Emperor Mo did not hold back at all as he unleashed all of his strength towards the head of the gigantic skeleton. Sensing the direction of God Emperor Mo's attack, the huge skeleton immediately used its huge arms to block. Ka-cha-cha! When God Emperor Mo's weapon landed on the skeletal arm, a shattering sound could be heard. In the end, God Emperor Mo's face did not reveal a trace of smile. Instead, his face was filled with fear. That was because when all of his power landed on the skeleton's body, traces of cracks actually appeared on the enormous skeleton's arm. These tiny cracks were negligible to the giant skeleton. It was as if they did not cause any harm to it at all. Ha! God Emperor Mo, you are really old. Your attacks are completely useless. The gigantic skeleton looked at the shocked God Emperor Mo and laughed. You're done attacking. It's my turn now. The moment the gigantic skeleton finished speaking, it raised its other hand and grabbed towards God Emperor Mo, God Emperor Mo, was shocked. He did not dare to take the attack head-on and immediately retreated. Although God Emperor Mo's retreating speed was fast enough, the speed of the gigantic skeleton was even faster. In the blink of an eye, it was about to land on God Emperor Mo. God Emperor Mo's eyes dimmed. He knew that he was doomed. Subconsciously, he used his weapon to block in front of him. Rumble, rumble. A few loud sounds could be heard. God Emperor Mo raised his head and saw that it was God Emperor Purple Heaven and the others. They were attacking the gigantic skeleton's arm at the same time, blocking the attack from the gigantic skeleton. God Emperor Mo, retreat quickly. We can't hold on any longer. God Emperor Purple Heaven gritted his teeth and transmitted a message to God Emperor Mo. God Emperor Mo was extremely touched. However, he was not an ungrateful person. God Emperor Purple Heaven had saved him. How could he leave God Emperor Purple Heaven in danger? When God Emperor Mo saw the gigantic skeleton, God Emperor Purple Heaven and the others trying their best to resist, God Emperor Mo's heart sank. Secret skill of the Mo world. God Emperor Mo stopped at his original position. With a roar, he started to use the secret skill of the Mo family. God Emperor Mo. Seeing God Emperor Mo using the secret skill, God Emperor Purple Heaven was anxious. He was worried for God Emperor Mo. This was because all the secret skills in the Myriad Kingdom continent were martial skills that could deal 1,000 damage to the enemy and 800 damage to the user. Although using the secret skill could greatly increase one's attack power, the consequences were equally disastrous. If we don't use the secret skill, we will also die. God Emperor Mo laughed. However, his laughter was filled with bloodthirst. The secret skill that God Emperor Mo was using was created by the founder of the Mo family. It was said that the founder had ascended to the upper world long ago. As for the secret skill of the Mo world, it had become a secret skill of the Mo family. Only the direct descendants of the Mo family could use it. After using the secret skill of the Mo world, it would turn a space into a space under one's control. In this space, one's martial power could increase by 10 times. On the other hand, the enemy would not be able to use any martial power in this space, and their movements would become sluggish. After seeing God Emperor Mo using the secret skill, the gigantic skeleton seemed to be wary of it. Its attacks towards God Emperor Purple Heaven and the rest became even more ferocious. All of you get lost. When the gigantic skeleton saw that God Emperor Purple Heaven and the rest were attacking it relentlessly, and that God Emperor Mo's secret skill was about to be completed, it roared and attacked. Boom! There was a loud sound as God Emperor Purple Heaven and the rest clashed with the gigantic skeleton once again. PFFF, this time, the gigantic skeleton was really anxious. The strength of its attacks was much stronger than before. God Emperor Purple Heaven and the rest could only feel their internal organs churning and blood trickled down the corner of their mouths. Get lost. Die. The gigantic skeleton roared again and attacked God Emperor Purple Heaven and the rest. Hold on. God Emperor Purple Heaven's hair was disheveled and blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. However, he still insisted on shouting. As for the rest of the old ancestors, they were not in a good state either. However, they did not give up as they gritted their teeth and charged forward once again, because they knew that if they were to retreat now, none of them would be able to escape. The gigantic skeleton was enraged. It did not expect these ants to be so reckless and dare to block it. In fact, it was also anxious. Because it had heard of the power of the secret skill, it did not dare to try it out recklessly. Therefore, at this moment, it only wanted to kill God Emperor Mo. As long as God Emperor Mo was killed, the secret skill would not be released. Chapter 643. This time around, the attack was much stronger than before. Purple Heaven God Emperor and the rest could no longer withstand it, as they were sent flying. Old Man died. After Purple Heaven God Emperor and the rest were sent flying, the huge skeleton charged towards Emperor God Mo, wanted to smash him into pieces with a single punch. Mo world open. Just as the gigantic skeleton's mountain-like fist was about to land on Emperor God Mo's body, Emperor God Mo suddenly shouted out. The huge skeleton could clearly feel that the surrounding martial arts energy had nothing to do with him. And most importantly, his fist suddenly stopped in midair, unable to move forward even an inch. Break for me. Emperor God Mo felt that his strength had increased by 10 folds. He had experienced this feeling once before. However, he also knew that this strength couldn't last for too long. Hence, he knew that he had to end this battle quickly. Emperor God Mo roared as he slashed the arm of the huge skeleton with the weapon in his hand. Boom, crack, crack. Just then, a huge cracking sound could be heard. A huge crater appeared on the arm of the giant skeleton. Moreover, there were many grooves on the arm of the giant skeleton. It was obvious that the attack this time around was much stronger than before. One must know that the previous attack could only cause a slight crack on the arm of the huge skeleton. Wah, I'm going to kill you. Seeing how his arm was slashed, the huge skeleton roared furiously. Let's see who's going to kill who. Relying on his secret skill, Emperor God Mo wasn't afraid of the huge skeleton as he continued to attack the huge skeleton. As for the huge skeleton, in terms of agility, it was slightly weaker than Emperor God Mo. However, the attack range of the huge skeleton was extremely huge. Hence, the two huge arms of the huge skeleton were like two small mountains as they swept in all directions, attacking Emperor God Mo. On the other hand, Emperor God Mo relied on his sharp dodging ability to attack the huge skeleton's body continuously. At this moment, Emperor God Mo didn't care about anything else. Wherever he could attack the huge skeleton's body, he would attack that spot immediately. His actions weren't sloppy at all. Every time he attacked the huge skeleton's body, he would bring away a huge amount of bone fragments. And I'm not done with you. At this moment, the huge skeleton's heart was burning with rage as it roared furiously. This king wants to see how long you can last. Although the giant skeleton was being attacked nonstop, its combat strength still did not decrease. The gigantic skeleton's fists were already moving like a machine as it continuously attacked God Emperor Mo. This skeleton is so powerful. Even when God Emperor Mo used his secret technique, he still couldn't kill it. Your Majesty, do you think God Emperor Mo can win? If God Emperor Mo doesn't kill those skeletons now, we will all be finished once the secret skills time is up. At this moment, the purple heaven God Emperor and the others had already retreated to the side. After consuming healing pills, they discussed worriedly. Why didn't Yi Hao make a move? If he makes a move, skeleton won't be so difficult to deal with. One of the patriarchs immediately thought of Yi Hao. That was his avatar. His main body is busy with something. What could be more important than repelling the enemy? Upon hearing the purple sky God Emperor's words, the third old master couldn't help but grumble. Third old master. Yi Hao must have gone to save Yi Luolan and the others. Hearing the dissatisfaction in the third old master's voice, the great old master immediately spoke out. Actually, Yi Hao had already saved his parents long ago. Furthermore, he had indeed gone to do something very important. Furthermore, it was something that concerned the outcome of this war. If you have the capabilities, don't jump. Fight me head on. God Emperor Mo was like an agile monkey as he attacked various parts of the gigantic skeleton's body. However, the gigantic skeleton couldn't do anything to God Emperor Mo as it roared out furiously. God Emperor Mo was actually feeling anxious in his heart. After using his secret technique, the strength and speed of his attacks increased tremendously. Furthermore, it caused quite a bit of damage to the gigantic skeleton's body. However, these damages were negligible when placed on the gigantic skeleton. Furthermore, the most vital part of the skeleton was the center of its head. The soul of the gigantic skeleton was all there. As long as the soul of the gigantic skeleton was destroyed, the gigantic skeleton would be finished. However, the gigantic skeleton knew of its own weakness as well. Therefore, it protected its head extremely well. If God Emperor Mo couldn't even touch the gigantic skeleton's head, how could he accurately attack the center of its head? Furthermore, even though his speed was slightly faster than the gigantic skeleton's speed wasn't slow either. Therefore, after attacking a spot, he had to change to another spot. Otherwise, he might be attacked by the gigantic skeleton. Therefore, he was unable to continuously attack a certain spot on the gigantic skeleton's body. If he couldn't continuously attack, he wouldn't be able to cause any substantial damage. No, it's time to retreat. God Emperor Mo could feel that the secret technique's duration was almost up. However, he didn't manage to kill the gigantic skeleton. His face was filled with unwillingness. However, he had no other choice. If he were to forcefully persist, he would enter a period of weakness after the secret technique ended. By then, he wouldn't be able to escape even if he wanted to. Only death would await him. The gigantic skeleton wasn't stupid. It could clearly sense God Emperor Mo's intentions. Since God Emperor Mo had attacked it for so long, it had long been enraged. At this point, it wouldn't let God Emperor Mo escape. Oh no, God Emperor Mo doesn't seem to be able to hold on any longer. The great old ancestor of Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom said anxiously, "Let me use my secret technique to save grandfather." Mo Jingfong was anxious and wanted to use her secret technique. Hearing Mo Jingfong's words, Purple Heaven Divine Emperor immediately stopped her. "Your cultivation is too low. Even if you use your secret technique, you won't be able to cause any harm to him. Let me do it." But Mo Jingfong looked at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor gratefully. However, she was embarrassed to let Purple Heaven Divine Emperor do it. After all, the side effects of using the secret technique were too great. No buts. Old ancestors, save him. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's tone was firm and fearless. Hearing Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's words, the old ancestors didn't hesitate. "Purple Luo Heavenly Realm, you forced me to do this." Seeing Purple Heaven Divine Emperor and the rest using their secret technique, the gigantic skeleton was even more furious. Earth Terminus Black Chi. The gigantic skeleton roared. From its body, a black light was emitted and surged towards God Emperor Mo. "What is this?" Looking at the black chi that was surging towards him, God Emperor Mo felt a dangerous aura from the black chi. One should know that the gigantic skeleton was strong. Just by relying on its body's strength, it was enough to defend against God Emperor Mo. Chapter 644. Sensing the extraordinariness of the Earth Terminus Black Chi, God Emperor Mo stopped attacking and retreated without hesitation. But who would have thought that the speed of the Earth Terminus Black Chi was faster than him by a little? Shit! God Emperor Mo was panicking, because at this moment, something even more terrible had happened, and that was the time for the secret technique to be used was up. God Emperor Mo gradually felt the energy in his body being sucked dry, and his speed was slowing down. And just then, the Black Chi seized the opportunity and entered God Emperor Mo's body. God Emperor Mo forced himself to calm down. At the same time, he wanted to use his martial arts to expel the Black Chi from his body. But he then realized that his body was like a dried-up well. There was no longer any trace of martial arts in his body. God Emperor Mo could only allow the Black Chi to invade his body and invade his consciousness. God Emperor Mo felt that his body was no longer under his control. His consciousness was gradually falling into a coma. "Ha, my slave, serve me forever. You will never have the chance to shine." The gigantic skeleton was like a devil's voice that filled God Emperor Mo's mind. God Emperor Mo's eyes were clear and turbid. It was obvious that God Emperor Mo's consciousness was still resisting and struggling. However, after struggling for a short while, God Emperor Mo's eyes turned completely turbid. Furthermore, there was even a lump of black chi in his eyes. He bowed towards the gigantic skeleton in a daze. "Yes, my master. I will be your servant forever." Grandfather. Looking at God Emperor Mo's demonic state, Mo Jingfong shouted anxiously. Save God Emperor Mo. Although Purple Heaven God Emperor did not know what the Earth Terminus Black Chi was, he shouted out worriedly when he saw the state God Emperor Mo was in. After all, God Emperor Mo used the secret skill to save them. Now that God Emperor Mo was in trouble, they should save him. Ha ha ha, no need to rush. All of you will become my slaves. Looking at Purple Heaven God Emperor and the rest, the gigantic skeleton was not afraid at all. Instead, it laughed excitedly. Vajra skeleton, you did not disappoint me. Looking at the gigantic skeleton subduing God Emperor Mo so easily, Mo Ji was not sad at all. Instead, he was smiling. Why didn't I kill that old man? Seems like I should find time to inform Vajra. Mo Ji muttered. Because in his eyes, royal authority was the most important. The longer God Emperor Mo lived, the more uneasy he felt in his heart. Upon hearing Mo Ji's words, the patriarchs around him couldn't help but frown. They didn't know whether it was right or wrong to choose to follow the ink. Someone like Mo Ji was simply too heartless. He even treated his own imperial father like that. Thus, how good would he treat them in the future? However, what shocked them even more was the strength of the giant skeleton. That was because they were extremely clear about God Emperor Mo's power. He could only be described with the word valiant. Furthermore, he had even used a secret skill to increase his strength by tens of times. One could imagine how strong God Emperor Mo was. However, even such a valiant God Emperor Mo was unable to cause any harm to the gigantic skeleton. At most, it would cause some light injuries to the giant skeleton. Even he himself had been turned into a slave by the giant skeleton. But thinking about it, if God Emperor Mo was like this, wouldn't they be even more so? Your Majesty, do you know what that black chi is? An ancestor asked curiously and cautiously. After all, if they knew the function of the black chi, what would they do if they were to face it? After all, the situation was developing too quickly. They couldn't imagine what would happen in the next second. Furthermore, the black chi was too terrifying. It could turn a person into a slave instantly. This was worse than killing a person. After all, turning into a slave without consciousness was akin to turning into a puppet. In the future, they would have to live in such a muddle-headed body. They could only listen to the orders of the giant skeleton and couldn't do anything else. This King Kong skeleton was a genius of the King Kong clan. After disappearing for hundreds of years, when he reappeared, he no longer looked like a normal King Kong. His entire head had turned into a skeleton. It was said that the reason why he disappeared for hundreds of years was because he went to the ancient demon region. However, looking at his appearance, it should be true. As for this black chi, it should be a cultivation technique that he obtained from the ancient demon region. Furthermore, when he turned into a skeleton, he was despised by the King Kong clan and was expelled from the King Kong clan. However, not long ago, he returned to the King Kong clan and subdued all the King Kong experts. Hearing the old ancestors' question, Mo Xian didn't hide anything and told them everything he knew. Mo Xian reckoned that this wasn't a secret. Since he was bored now, he could tell them to pass the time. Hearing about the ancient demon region, the old ancestors of the Jintian divine nation had a change in expression. Obviously, they had heard of the ancient demon region. One must know that the ancient demon region was a place full of mysteries and dangers to the experts of the Myriad Kingdom continent. Because in the Myriad Kingdom continent, countless experts had entered the ancient demon region. However, only a handful of them had returned alive. According to the ratio, it was difficult for even 1 out of 1,000 people who entered the ancient demon region to return alive. This number wasn't exaggerated at all, because those who could return from the ancient demon region were all famous and invincible existences in the continent. However, the ancient demon region was famous for its prowess. So far, very few people dare to enter the ancient demon region because the ancient demon region had become a synonym for death. Unless one was forced into a corner or had a blood feud with someone, they would take the risk and enter. because in the ancient demon region, danger coexisted with opportunity. Although it was full of danger, at the same time, there were opportunities everywhere. As long as one was lucky, they could soar to the sky. The giant skeleton was the best example. However, the price to pay for turning a good body into a skeleton was equally great. Ordinary people couldn't accept it. It was equivalent to turning a normal person into an undead. Without sufficient mental fortitude, it was impossible to do it. But obviously, although the price was great, the benefits were obvious too. Just the strength of the giant skeleton alone was enough to be the #1 person in the Myriad Kingdom continent. After all, even a 4th-level ultimate martial god expert who used a secret technique wasn't a match for it. Who else could be a match for it? One must know that those who surpassed the 4th-level ultimate martial god would ascend to the upper realm. Your Majesty, aren't you worried that he... The old ancestor's voice was filled with fear when he saw the powerful giant skeleton. He stopped abruptly midway. His meaning couldn't be more obvious. Chapter 645. Looking at Emoji's confident expression, the old ancestor swallowed back his words. Emoji looked conceited. If the old ancestor spoke too much, Emoji might be displeased. However, the old ancestor was still worried about the giant skeleton. After all, he did not believe that a person who was the strongest in the world would be willing to share the world with others. Moreover, they were not from the same race. After all, the giant skeleton belonged to the King Kong race. All right, where's the trash from Jintian Divine Nation? Ink suddenly discovered that the new God Emperor of Heaven Shaking Divine Nation had disappeared at some unknown time. I will go look for him now. No need. He is just trash. Why should we care about him? Petty tricks. No matter how powerful your attacks are, they're trash in front of my Earth Terminus black gas. The giant skeleton said proudly when it saw Purple Heaven Supreme, God Emperor, and the rest using their ultimate skills. Your Majesty, what should we do? There is black gas everywhere. There is nowhere to attack. One of the old ancestors shouted anxiously, because at this moment, the giant skeleton's entire body was covered with black gas. The old ancestors of Purple Heaven Supreme God Kingdom were afraid of the black gas. None of them dared to go near the giant skeleton. However, even though they did not go near the giant skeleton was attacking them. Oh no, expel the black gas from your body. Purple Heaven Supreme, God Emperor, and the rest retreated, but the Earth Terminus black gas still entered their bodies. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor immediately shouted. The other patriarchs also began to circulate their martial arts power to resist the invasion of the Black Chi. Ha! Let's see how long you can resist. The giant skeleton laughed and continued to release the black gas. The Earth Terminus black gas gathered and rushed toward Purple Heaven Supreme, God Emperor, and the rest. For a moment, the two sides were actually evenly matched. Attack them. As the giant skeleton was using the Earth Terminus black gas, it could not attack anymore. It could only order Emperor God, Mo, yes, Master. Emperor God, Mo, was like a puppet. He did not have any consciousness as he rushed toward Purple Heaven Supreme, God Emperor. No, Grandpa. Seeing Emperor God Mo's actions, Mo Jingfong wanted to stop him. Back off. You are no match for the black gas. Purple Heaven Supreme, God Emperor knew how powerful the black gas was after fighting against it. After all, he was an ultimate martial god and had used a secret skill to barely block the invasion of the giant skeleton's black chi. Hearing the Purple Heaven Supreme, God Emperor's words, Mo Jingfong was momentarily at a loss for words. She was also afraid that if she went up, she would not be able to help. It would be bad if she dragged Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor and the others down. However, if he allowed his grandfather to attack freely, it would definitely affect Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor and the others in resisting the black aura. Mo Jingfong was also in a dilemma. Should she make a move? He might not be able to help. If she did not take action, she would not be able to see the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor and the others in danger without doing anything. One slash. At this tense moment, a shout suddenly came from the sky. Yi Hao, you're finally here. Seeing Yi Hao appear, Mo Jingfong heaved a sigh of relief as though she had found a backer. Seeing Yi Hao, Mo Jingfong felt as though she had seen hope. Yi Hao also didn't expect that such a big thing would happen while he was just handling one matter. Yi Hao had also witnessed the strength of the giant skeleton. Hence, he was not arrogant and immediately used his strongest martial skill. Ha ha! A small ant dares to attack me? I'll let you attack me. So what? Seeing Yi Hao appear, the giant skeleton sneered loudly. He saw that Yi Hao's cultivation was only at the martial god realm. He had not even reached the ultimate martial god realm. Hence, he looked down on Yi Hao even more. After all, he was not even afraid of Purple Heaven Supreme, God Emperor, and the others who had used their secret skills. Why would he take Yi Hao seriously? Yi Hao attacked the center of his head. That's his Achilles heel. Seeing Yi Hao use one slash immediately, the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor shouted. He had seen the power of one slash with his own eyes and immediately sent a message to Yi Hao. In fact, Yi Hao was also worried about whether he could kill the giant skeleton. After all, if he could not kill the giant skeleton with one slash, the giant skeleton would be on guard. Then, it would be difficult for him to attack the giant skeleton again. Seeing that the giant skeleton was looking down on him, Yi Hao was not angry, but happy. The more the giant skeleton looked down on him, the higher his chances of killing the giant skeleton. However, to be safe, Yi Hao still released a few heaven-devouring rats to attract the giant skeleton's attention. Indeed, when the giant skeleton saw the heaven-devouring rats, it recalled the last time it had been bitten by the heaven-devouring rats. It shivered. However, it quickly recovered and shouted angrily, "It's these damn rats again. This time, don't even think about hurting me. I'm going to eat them alive." The giant skeleton's body had completely changed, and it was much stronger than before. Hence, the giant skeleton was confident in its defense. Even if it let the heaven-devouring rats bite it, they would not be able to break its defense. Now's the time. Seeing that the giant skeleton was indeed attracted by the heaven-devouring rats, Yi Hao seized the opportunity and attacked the giant skeleton's head. At this moment, everyone was looking at Yi Hao nervously because whether Yi Hao could defeat the giant skeleton was the key to the victory of this war. If Yi Hao was defeated, then no one in the Myriad Kingdom continent would be a match for the giant skeleton. The giant skeleton would be invincible. The giant skeleton only reacted when Yi Hao flew to the top of its head. However, it could not attack Yi Hao at all. Hurry up and restrain him. Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor transmitted his voice to the patriarchs. The patriarchs unleashed all their martial power, because whether they lived or died depended on Yi Hao's slash. Don't struggle. Seeing the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor and the others release their martial power, the giant skeleton roared and continued to release the Earth Fiend Black Chi to suppress the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor and the others. As for Yi Hao, he was regarded as an ant. This was because his head was the hardest part of his body. He allowed Yi Hao to attack as he wished. How could an ant overturn the sky? Yi Hao locked on to the center of the giant skeleton's head and rushed straight for it. Whether we succeed or not depends on you. Yi Hao seemed to be talking to himself, but also seemed to be talking to the Bloody Scar dual blades. The Bloody Scar dual blades could clearly hear Yi Hao's words, and the blades let out a roar. In the blink of an eye, the Bloody Scar dual blades slashed at the giant skeleton's head. It landed right in the middle of his body. However, the giant skeleton's head was intact. Even when Yi Hao attacked the giant skeleton, it did not make a sound. Are we going to lose just like that? When the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor and the others saw this scene, their eyes dimmed and a sense of powerlessness welled up in their hearts. They were unwilling to accept this. They had not expected that Yi Hao would not be able to defeat the giant skeleton. King Kong, good job. Chapter 646. There are actually some clowns trying to attack the King Kong. What a joke. Mo Ji mocked Yi Hao, who was still standing on the giant skeleton's head. Trash is trash. I'll let you attack me. How can you hurt me in the slightest? The giant skeleton mocked back. The King Kong is so strong. How can he be this strong? It seems like the Dragon Clan will have to give up the throne of the Beast Clan in the future. With the King Kong's strength, it's hard to find a match in the myriad kingdom continent. The commotion on the giant skeleton's side naturally attracted the attention of all the Beast Clan powerhouses, who all looked over. However, they weren't shocked by the giant skeleton's strength because of Yi Hao. It was because the giant skeleton could single-handedly take on the Purple Sky God Emperor and the others, while the Purple Sky God Emperor and the others were still at a disadvantage. All the Beast Clan leaders immediately tried to curry favor with the giant skeleton when they saw this. Who is that kid? How dare he be so impudent in front of the King Kong? He's simply courting death. He's just a small ant. How dare he act so rashly in front of the King Kong? I reckon that the King Kong won't even bother to deal with such a small ant. Let us do it for the King Kong. As soon as the Fox Clan leader finished speaking, all the Beast Clan leaders looked at Yi Hao with gleaming eyes. At this moment, Yi Hao had obviously become a hot steam bun. Everyone wanted to kill Yi Hao in an attempt to gain the favor of the giant skeleton. Attack! Someone shouted, and all the Beast Clan leaders charged at Yi Hao. Looking at the leaders of these forces, Yi Hao's face was filled with disdain. His face was expressionless as he suddenly said, "Explode! Explode you!" Upon hearing Yi Hao's words, the Fox Clan leader was about to scold Yi Hao. However, at this moment, a shattering sound was heard, and the Fox Clan leader's words came to an abrupt halt. Everyone looked at the giant skeleton because the shattering sound had come from its head. Everyone's expression changed. Their bodies froze in the air, not daring to move. Terrifying cracks began to appear on the head of the giant skeleton, which had been as smooth as white jade at first. The mocking smile on the gigantic skeleton's face disappeared and was replaced by fear. The giant skeleton stared at Yi Hao as if it was looking at a devil. At this time, he wanted to say something, but he could only say the word "you," and couldn't say another word. The giant skeleton's eyes were filled with disbelief and unwillingness, but the crack on its head was getting bigger and bigger. The giant skeleton stretched out its hands and held its head, trying to stop its head from shattering, but it was useless. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound rang out as the head of the giant skeleton suddenly exploded and shot out in all directions. The earth fiend black chi released by the giant skeleton seemed to have lost its support and immediately dissipated into the air. The giant skeleton's body, which was hundreds of feet tall, collapsed in an instant. He actually did it. The third old ancestor looked at the expressionless Yi Hao standing in the void and revealed a joyful smile. I knew he could do it. Purple Sky's supreme god also heaved a sigh of relief and smiled proudly. Yi Hao looked at the giant skeleton's shattered head and suddenly saw a red light. He immediately flew over. It is indeed here. Yi Hao immediately rushed over and picked up the red object. It was obviously an origin fragment. Yi Hao was in a good mood. He had not expected to find it so easily after searching high and low for it. He had managed to find the remaining 2 pieces of the origin force in just a day. The origin fragment of the giant skeleton was the 9th origin fragment. The 8th origin fragment was in the hands of the new emperor of Jintian. As for why he had disappeared for so long, it was because he had sensed that the origin fragment was in the hands of the new emperor of Jintian. After a series of threats, he had finally found the 8th origin fragment in the hands of the new emperor of Jintian. What do you want? Yi Hao looked at the beast leaders mockingly. The beast leaders looked at Yi Hao, and their hearts were filled with embarrassment and fear. They had not expected that the real expert was here. Thinking about how they had mocked Yi Hao and called him an ant, they felt their old faces burning. They had never expected that Yi Hao would kill the giant skeleton with a simple slash. And no one saw how Yi Hao had done it. One could imagine the complicated feelings of the beast leaders at this moment. They were not even a match for the giant skeleton, and they had to kneel down and lick its boots. Now, facing Yi Hao, who was even stronger than the giant skeleton, they were even less of a match for him. Yi Hao looked at the fox leader. He had clearly heard that it was this fox who had provoked the dispute and wanted to attack him. Being stared at by Yi Hao's sharp eyes, the fox leader felt all the fox fur on its body stand up, and its heart began to tremble. One had to know that in this myriad lands continent, there had never been anyone who could make it feel afraid. And Yi Hao actually made it have the urge to kneel down and submit with just one look. How can he be so powerful? Ji roared in his heart at this moment and looked at Yi Hao with some jealousy. He was jealous of the unfairness of the heavens. Why was Yi Hao so powerful at such a young age and had the strength to make everyone tremble? Why was this person not him? He would never have thought that even the giant skeleton was not a match for Yi Hao. He recalled how he had mocked Yi Hao just now, but it had only been a while, and Yi Hao had slapped him back. Everyone, you have seen it too. If we don't join forces, no one will be a match for this kid today. If this happens, no one will have a good day. Ji suppressed the jealousy in his heart towards Yi Hao. He immediately stepped forward and instigated the many magical beast leaders. He could already see that the eyes of many leaders were full of fear towards Yi Hao, so he had to take the opportunity to sow discord. Otherwise, if he really let Yi Hao scare these leaders, then he would really become alone. At that time, he was afraid that he would really die without a burial place. Seeing that the beast leaders were still in a dilemma, Ji immediately transmitted his voice. Everyone, you have offended him with your words just now. He is a narrow-minded person and will never let you go easily. Ji's words instantly defeated the last trace of hesitation in the hearts of the beast leaders. Why? Are you listening to his deception and want to join forces to deal with me? Yi Hao looked at the beast leaders, whose eyes were constantly changing, and laughed jokingly. Hearing Yi Hao's words, the beast leaders were shocked. They didn't expect that their thoughts would be noticed by Yi Hao so quickly. Chapter 647. Have you ever experienced despair? Yi Hao smiled evilly. What do you mean? Everyone was obviously stunned and did not understand what Yi Hao meant. Ding dong. Does the host confirm the fusion of the origin fragment? Yes. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for successful fusion. You have obtained the origin power of the Myriad Kingdom continent. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 3 billion experience points. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for leveling up. The current level is Peak Martial God. The origin fragment in Yi Hao's space quickly fused together. It then turned into a ball and shot into Yi Hao's dantian. Yi Hao immediately had a feeling that every blade of grass and every tree in this world was under his control. Even a martial arts power was under his control. Martial arts power withdraw. Yi Hao controlled the origin power in his body and gave the order. Where's my martial arts power? Why has the martial arts power in my body disappeared? And me, I can't even sense the martial arts power in the air. How could this be? What did you do? At this moment, everyone looked at Yi Hao in panic. This was because the disappearance of the martial arts power was like losing their lives to them. This was because their strength was completely supported by the martial arts power. Without the martial arts power, wouldn't they be at the mercy of others? I'll return it to you, Yi Hao said with a chuckle. Then Yi Hao controlled the martial arts power and crazily poured it into everyone's bodies. No, don't do this. I'll be stuffed to death. Please stop quickly. There's too much martial arts power. I'm going to explode. Please stop. Please stop. I can't hold on any longer. Yi Hao returned the martial arts power to the beasts. But in the end, it brought about even more intense panicked pleas for mercy. This was because the martial arts power that could be stored in their bodies was limited, and Yi Hao continuously poured martial arts power into their bodies. In the end, there was only one result: they would explode and die. Your Majesty Yi Hao, I was wrong. Please spare me. I beg you, Your Majesty Yi Hao, please stop. Your Majesty Yi Hao, I'll help you destroy the Shun Empire. Please stop. I really can't take it anymore. The beasts screamed and begged for mercy. At this moment, they felt that their bodies could explode at any time. If their bodies exploded, it meant death. They didn't want to die, so they could only beg for mercy. I've said it before. I want you to experience despair, Yi Hao said coldly. He had no intention of stopping. No. The fox leader had received special treatment from Yi Hao, so he had been infused with the most martial arts power. At this moment, he did not even have the chance to beg for mercy. Boom! Suddenly, an explosive sound rang out. The fox was 100 zhang tall, and it instantly turned into a rain of blood. It was blown up by the power of martial arts, and there wasn't even a single piece of flesh left. Don't want. As the fox leader exploded, the eyes of the other magical beast commanders were filled with panic. They had not expected Yi Hao to be so serious about killing them. At that moment, they finally knew what despair was. Because they were in Yi Hao's hands. They didn't even have the chance to beg for mercy before facing death. The feeling of being choked by the Grim Reaper was too unbearable. The martial arts power in their bodies increased, and they could not hold on any longer. Boom, boom, boom. Dozens of consecutive explosions rang out. The magical beast commanders, who had been majestic at the beginning, had all turned into a rain of blood, splattering on the ground. Roar! Seeing the death of so many magical beast commanders, all the magical beasts looked at Yi Hao with only fear in their eyes. All of them trembled and prostrated themselves. At this moment, they felt that Yi Hao could easily decide their life and death with just one look. Revive! Yi Hao's mind moved. The rain of blood on the ground started to condense. What's going on? All the humans looked at this scene in panic. Even a magical beast looked up at the rain of blood in the sky. The rain of blood slowly condensed, revealing the appearances of magical beasts. I'm not dead. The fox leader was the fastest to revive. The fox leader looked at his body in a daze. He clearly felt that, at that moment, his body couldn't store that much martial arts power and exploded. Not only the fox leader, but all the humans and magical beasts who were watching were stunned by the scene before them. What did I just see? Resurrection from the dead? How is this possible? There really is resurrection from the dead. Look at those magical beast commanders. They are all resurrected. Oh my God, who is this person? He's too terrifying. His majesty is so powerful that he can revive from the dead. Such a heaven-defying technique. Even Purple Heaven's Supreme God Emperor and the others were stunned by the scene before them. Yi Hao, how did he do it? Purple Heaven's Supreme God Emperor looked at Yi Hao curiously. He's so cool. Mo Jingfang looked at Yi Hao with admiration. The elders of the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom were completely speechless. We're not dead. We're alive again. How is this possible? I clearly felt that I was dead. How can I not be dead? I'm not dead. Ha ha ha, I'm not dead. Some of the revived magical beast commanders were confused. Some were excited, and some were in disbelief. How is it? Do you still want to experience what despair is? Hearing Yi Hao's words, the magical beast commanders shuddered. In their eyes, Yi Hao had turned into a god, an existence who could control their life and death. At this moment, none of the magical beast commanders dared to defy Yi Hao. They were lucky that Yi Hao had resurrected them. If they angered Yi Hao and he killed them and did not resurrect them, they would be finished. Greetings to the sovereign beast. All the Beast Clan experts looked at each other and turned into their human forms. They knelt at Yi Hao's feet and bowed sincerely. The sovereign beast was the most respected existence in the Beast Clan. The sovereign beast was like the emperor of the Beast Clan and could control the life and death of all the Beast Clans. The sovereign beast had not appeared in the Myriad Kingdom continent for hundreds of thousands of years. This was because the magical beast could not become the sovereign beast just because they wanted to. It was also not something that could be done with strength. In their memories, the sovereign beast would appear on its own. When the sovereign beast appeared, it was the time when the sovereign beast was united. Yi Hao could control their life and death. Obviously, he was the legendary sovereign beast that they had been waiting for. How is this possible? How can he be the sovereign beast? Mo Jingfang's face turned pale when he heard the magical beast commanders address Yi Hao. He had also heard of the title of revered beast. However, He could not accept that the sovereign beast that had disappeared for hundreds of thousands of years was Yi Hao. Chapter 648. How dare you, M.O. Stain? Stop your nonsense. How dare you insult the sovereign beast? Sovereign beast, please allow me to kill him. Unforgivable. Who gave him the guts to insult the sovereign beast? This is absolutely unforgivable. In the inherited memories of all the beasts, the sovereign beast was definitely the most powerful existence and was also the one they worshipped. They were all the sovereign beasts' most devout subordinates. It could be said that for the sovereign beast, they would not hesitate to sacrifice their lives. Yi Hao could control their lives and deaths. They did not doubt Yi Hao's identity as the sovereign beast. M.O. Stain dared to question Yi Hao's identity, which naturally infuriated everyone. M.O. Stain's expression changed. He had not expected this group of demonic beasts to be so devout to the sovereign beast. If this continued, he would be finished. After all, he had relied on the beasts to have the courage to go against Yi Hao. However, now that the beasts had all become Yi Hao's devout subordinates, what else could he use to go against Yi Hao? Kill. Yi Hao coldly spat out the word. The beasts, along with the original soldiers, immediately rushed towards the soldiers of the Mozhen nation. M.O. Stain, let me take your head. The imperial ant had not forgotten that M.O. Stain had slapped her and almost humiliated her. This was absolutely a great humiliation to her. Since it was a great humiliation, she naturally had to take revenge with her own hands to vent the resentment in her heart. Hurry up and stop this crazy woman. Capture her for me. M.O. Stain hurriedly pleaded with the patriarchs beside him when he saw the imperial ant rushing towards him aggressively. Although they were dissatisfied with M.O. Stain's tone, the three patriarchs were very cooperative and went to capture the imperial ant. If they captured the imperial ant, she would be a life-saving talisman. You're the one who delivered yourself to our doorstep. Looking at the imperial ant who was rushing over, a smile appeared on the corner of one of the ancestors' lips. After all, the imperial ant was on par with them in terms of strength. However, the imperial ant was alone, while there were three of them. He did not believe that the three of them could not defeat one of them. Oomph! Yi Hao snorted when he saw the three patriarchs attacking his mother. Protect my mother. Yi Hao had thought that he would be able to control everyone's martial arts once he obtained the power of origin. However, it was only now that he discovered why this world's source energy was called beast source energy. This was because he could only control magical beasts and not humans. Although he could control martial arts, he could only control the martial arts of magical beasts. He could not control the martial arts of humans. Otherwise, he would have directly extracted the martial power of the three patriarchs, and they would have been at his mother's mercy. Yi had to know why he couldn't control humans. However, he had to guess that the humans in the Myriad Kingdom continent were also invaders. The origin energy could only control the natives, which were the magical beasts. As for humans, because they were outsiders, they were not bound by the origin energy of this world. Of course, this was just Yi Hao's guess. After receiving Yi Hao's order, many magical beast commanders immediately rushed towards the three patriarchs. Many of them even used their secret skills. After all, this was the mother of the beast sovereign. There must be no accidents. The expressions of the three patriarchs changed. They didn't expect these magical beast commanders to go all out and block in front of them in an instant. When the imperial ant saw that the three patriarchs were stopped, she rushed towards M.O. Sien even more fearlessly. Don't, I surrender. M.O. Sien looked at the imperial ant who was rushing towards her, and the patriarchs had been stopped. She was no match for the imperial ant now. Sensing the murderous aura of the imperial ant, M.O. Sien retreated in a panic and begged for mercy. Soulless powder. Just as M.O. Sien retreated step by step, a cunning look suddenly flashed in her eyes. She scattered some powdered objects in her hands. This was a special powder refined by the M.O. family. Anyone who smelled it would lose all their cultivation and become powerless, as if they had lost their soul. However, The imperial ant had expected this and easily dodged it. How can I not be on guard against such a treacherous person like you? The imperial ant sneered, and the soft sword in her hand shot out at the same time. However, the soft sword was not aimed at Mo Xian's neck or vital parts. Instead, it was aimed at Mo Xian's lower body. Mo Xian's lower body was pierced, and she immediately screamed in pain. She glared at the imperial ant and cursed. "You vicious woman, you will die a horrible death. Kill me if you can. You want to die? It's not that easy." The imperial ant cut off Mo Xian's penis to vent her anger, but she didn't want to kill Mo Xian directly. That was because killing Mo Xian would be letting her off too easily. As the imperial ant, for so many years, she naturally had her own temper and methods. Anyone who dared to provoke her had to think of the consequences. If it weren't for her forceful methods, she wouldn't have been able to share the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom with the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor. The imperial ant's gaze turned cold. She pierced Mo Xian's dantian and destroyed her martial body at the same time. I'm going to kill you, kill you." Mo Xian crawled on the ground and screamed in pain. At this time, his martial path was destroyed and he was completely crippled. Most importantly, his penis was cut off. If his martial path hadn't been destroyed, there might still be hope for his lifeblood to recover. But now, even that glimmer of hope had been destroyed. This was even more unbearable than killing him. If resentment could kill, the imperial ant would have been cut into pieces by Mo Xian. "I won't kill you. I'll let you suffer all the pain and torture in this world." The imperial ant said coldly and turned to leave. As for the three patriarchs, they were brutally beaten to death by the dozens of magical beast commanders. Seeing Mo Xian's miserable state, Yihao didn't have the slightest bit of pity. Mo Xian and the many old ancestors of the Ink God Kingdom were dead. His anger had been vented, and it was time to fulfill his promise to the Ink God Emperor. Yihao activated his martial path power, and his voice resounded between heaven and earth. "Those who surrender will not be killed. Those who surrender will not be killed. Those who surrender will not be killed. Those who surrender will not be killed." Hearing Yihao's words, the soldiers in Yihao's camp shouted loudly. When the soldiers of the Ink God Emperor heard this, it was as if they had heard the sound of nature. Among them, there were originally Yihao's worshippers. It was just that they were coerced by Mo Xian. Seizing the opportunity, they threw their weapons on the ground and knelt on the ground. "We surrender. Yihao, please don't kill us. Yihao, I'm your sincere worshipper. Brothers, don't resist anymore. Quickly surrender." Many experts of the Ink God Kingdom shouted, "Don't believe him. He will kill you." At this moment, a man who looked like a general suddenly shouted. Those who wanted to surrender hesitated when they heard this. Chapter 649. Chariot Crack. Yihao spat out these two words. Everyone was shocked when they heard Yihao's words. Chariot Crack was a cruel punishment. Who would use it on a battlefield? Yihao was probably the most powerful person in the Myriad Kingdom continent. "Tyrant, you tyrant. You won't have a good ending if you follow him." Hearing Che Lai's name, cold sweat appeared on the face of that die-hard loyalist. However, he immediately shouted loudly, "Those who surrender will be spared. Those who don't surrender will be chariot crack." Yihao ordered. He did not want to be entangled in such trivial matters. Tyrant, you will die a horrible death." Following the screams of the loyal follower, his body was forcefully pulled by several experts and torn into pieces. He's for real. This Yin Long young emperor is not to be trifled with. Surrender if you don't want me chariot crack. The soldiers of the divine Ink Nation felt a chill run down their spines as they saw their loyalists being torn apart by the chariot. They began to discuss amongst themselves, their eyes filled with fear as they looked at Yihao. "Yihao, come take a look at my grandfather." Yihao suddenly heard Mo Jingfang's cry for help. Yihao immediately flew over. At this moment, God Emperor Mo's entire face turned pitch black as he fell into a deep sleep. "What's going on?" Yihao frowned. He was not clear about the Earth Terminus black gas. Yi Hao frowned when he heard about the Earth terminus black gas. He had never heard of the Earth terminus black gas and did not know how to explain it. Yi Hao, my Purple Sky Divine Kingdom will be handed over to you. I hope you can treat it well. Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor suddenly spoke up. Yi Hao wanted to thank Purple Sky Divine Emperor, but he was shocked when he saw Purple Sky Divine Emperor's face. You're also affected by the Earth terminus black gas? Yi Hao frowned. It was only then that he saw the Violet Heaven Supreme God Emperor and the patriarchs of the Violet Heaven Divine Kingdom. Their faces were dark, and they looked terrifying. Yi Hao looked at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor worriedly. At the same time, he grabbed Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's hand and channeled his martial arts power. He wanted to help Purple Heaven Divine Emperor expel the Earth Fiend Black Chi. As soon as he got rid of it, Yi Hao let go of his hand. How did this happen? Yi Hao frowned. When he was trying to expel the Earthly Fiend Black Gas, the Earthly Fiend Black Gas followed his martial power and tried to enter his body. Luckily, he had cut off his martial power in time. Otherwise, he would have been invaded by the Earth Fiend Black Chi. It's no use. This martial path power only has a temporary restraining effect on it. Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor smiled bleakly when he saw Yi Hao's frown. Let me take a good look at you. Purple Sky Supreme God looked at Yi Hao, his voice full of reluctance. The Earthly Fiend Black Chi in her body was getting stronger and stronger. It was almost to the point where she could not suppress it. She was afraid that if she did not stay with Yi Hao for a while longer, she would become like Emperor God Mo and might never wake up again. Hearing Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor's words, Yi Hao felt his heart clench. Yi Hao pulled the Purple Sky Divine Emperor into his arms. The Purple Sky Divine Emperor also closed his eyes in enjoyment. A smile appeared on his face. Seeing this, the patriarchs of Purple Sky Supreme God Kingdom were shocked. They had not expected Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor to have an affair with Yi Hao. However, when they thought of Yi Hao's current strength, they understood. My son is indeed valiant. Seeing her son pull Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor into his arms and act like a little girl, Royal Aunt secretly gave him a thumbs up. At the same time, she was overjoyed. After all, Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor used to be her sworn enemy. In this world, there was nothing more satisfying than turning her sworn enemy into her daughter-in-law. At the thought of Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor calling her mother in the future, Royal Aunt could not stop smiling. My son is indeed like his father. Yi Batian stood behind Royal Aunt and nodded. Our daughters-in-law are all good-looking. Why? Are you envious? Do you want me to find a few for you, Your Majesty? Suddenly, Royal Aunt smiled and looked at Yi Batian. Yi Batian did not look at Royal Aunt. He knew that this was a trap and immediately smiled awkwardly. Why would I do that? You are enough for me. That's more like it. Royal Aunt put away her sword with satisfaction. You are still so valiant. Yi Batian was speechless when he heard Royal Aunt put away her sword. What did you say? Nothing. I can't take it anymore. I'm so sleepy. Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor said weakly. Gradually, he felt that he had no strength to open his eyes. Don't worry, I will save you. Hearing Yi Hao's promise, Purple Heaven Supreme God made a sound of acknowledgement and then fell into a coma. There was no more movement. Giant skeleton, come out! Yi Hao roared angrily. Everyone looked at Yi Hao in shock. Has His Majesty gone mad? The King Kong monarch is already dead. Everyone looked at Yi Hao strangely. They thought that Yi Hao had been traumatized by Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor's coma. However, at this moment, the pile of skeletons on the ground actually stood up. What was even stranger was that flesh and blood were gradually growing out of the giant skeleton's body. It was actually a majestic giant Vajra. Sovereign beast. It is indeed a sovereign beast. Only a sovereign beast would have this ability. A sovereign beast is indeed valiant. I actually saw it come back from the dead with my own eyes. A sovereign beast is invincible and can sweep across the world. Seeing Yi Hao bring the giant skeleton back to life, All the beasts were now convinced that Yi Hao was a sovereign beast. One by one, they knelt on the ground with pious eyes. A sovereign beast? Did I come back from the dead because I became a sovereign beast? The giant skeleton was a little confused at first. Then, it looked in the direction where everyone was kneeling. It was obviously himself. As for Yi Hao, who was standing behind him, he naturally ignored him. Ha ha! The heavens are indeed kind to me, the King Kong monarch. The heavens have such good taste. You have chosen me, the King Kong monarch, as a sovereign beast. Doesn't that mean that I will have an immortal body in the future? Ha ha ha! The King Kong monarch shouted excitedly. As a member of the beasts, he had naturally heard of the legends of the sovereign beast. Moreover, he was currently in a state of excitement after coming back from the dead. Ahem! The King Kong monarch deliberately coughed a few times and said to the leaders of the beasts in a kingly manner, "Rest assured, I will lead you all to conquer the world and make the beasts famous." After saying that, the King Kong monarch deliberately raised his head to look at the sky at a 45-degree angle. He pretended to be a king and wanted to listen to the beasts. However, the leaders of the beasts looked at the King Kong monarch as if he was an idiot. They were discussing among themselves. What is the King Kong monarch talking to himself about? Who knows? Could it be that the sovereign beast struck him and turned him into a retard? Chapter 650. What is the meaning of this? How dare you insult me? The King Kong was enraged when he saw the other beasts looking at him with disdain. How dare you be so presumptuous in front of sovereign beast? Kneel down. The fox leader stood up immediately and pointed at the King Kong angrily. Sovereign beast? Isn't that me? The King Kong was stunned when he heard the fox leader's words. Ha ha ha! Everyone burst into laughter when they heard the King Kong's words. The King Kong felt a little embarrassed when he heard the crowd's laughter. He turned around angrily. He wanted to see who else this sovereign beast could be other than himself. Little B asterisk starred. I'm going to kill you. The King Kong turned around and saw Yi Hao. The scene of Yi Hao killing him was still vivid in his mind. How dare you, King Kong? Don't be so presumptuous. All the beast commanders roared when they saw the King Kong attack Yi Hao. The King Kong clan was even more afraid. They were afraid that they would offend Yi Hao because of the King Kong. If Yi Hao didn't like the King Kong clan in the future, it would be terrible. King Kong, stop. That's the sovereign beast. The King Kong clan elites shouted anxiously. What do you mean he's the sovereign beast? Ha 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 ha. Are you guys out of your minds? Watch how I kill this piece of trash. The King Kong mocked them and threw a punch at Yi Hao. Kneel down. Yi Hao shouted coldly as he circulated the beast's source power in his body. I'll kneel down. Plop. The King Kong had just finished speaking when he lost control of his body and fell to his knees with a plop. What sorcery did you use? Let me go and I'll kill you. The King Kong clan panicked when he lost control of his body. He glared at Yi Hao and roared. Have you ever experienced despair? Yi Hao looked at the King Kong clan. He could only rely on the King Kong clan if he wanted to remove the Earth Terminus black gas from the purple sky, Supreme God Emperor, and the others. However, if he didn't subdue the King Kong clan, he would never help him. If the King Kong clan didn't help him, it would be bad if he hurt the purple sky Supreme God Emperor and the others. He could only resurrect demonic beasts, not humans. Hearing Yi Hao's words, all the beasts couldn't help but shiver. Recalling the feeling of their bodies exploding from the power of martial arts, they did not want to experience it again, because that would be even more unbearable than directly killing them. Many demonic beasts looked at the Vajra King with pity in their eyes. F***CKU. Let go of me. I'll let you know what despair is. The Vajra King struggled with all his might as he cursed. 1,000 arrows piercing the heart. Yi Hao suddenly said. However, Yi Hao did not move. Everyone looked at Yi Hao in confusion. They did not know what Yi Hao was up to. Bastard. Ah, it hurts. It hurts. It hurts. If the King Kong knew what Yi Hao was thinking right now, he would probably want to cry. I'm going to kill you. As soon as the King Kong felt the heat on his body dissipate, He attacked Yihao without giving him a chance to catch his breath. Cold. Creak. 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 However, no matter how fast he reacted, he wasn't as fast as Yihao. In an instant, the King Kong felt as if he had fallen into a bottomless ice cave. He gritted his teeth. It was as if the whole world was filled with the sound of the King Kong gnashing his teeth. Everyone couldn't help but shudder when they saw the state the King Kong was in. It was as if the King Kong's coldness was contagious. At this moment, all the beasts looked at the King Kong with pity in their eyes. Of all the beasts to provoke, why did he have to provoke a venerable beast? Wasn't he courting death? As for the humans, their gazes towards Yihao were filled with admiration and admiration. This was because every warrior knew how powerful the beasts were in the myriad lands continent. Furthermore, the beasts were stronger than warriors of the same level. It was just that they weren't as numerous as the humans, so they had always been suppressed by the humans. No one dared to provoke the beasts completely because the humans wouldn't have it easy either. However, Yihao could make all the beasts kneel down and submit to him. How could they not worship him? You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.